thank you guys for coming today. A lot of you are DHR people, some of you are not. We appreciate you coming to hear David talk about relationships over roles, both his presentation and sneak peek at some quotes from his book and the principles that are in there, all of which are based on relationships, which is what David has founded his successful business and friendships on. So thanks for being here.
All right. Good morning, guys. Is this on? Okay, cool. All right. So I timed this. It's the first time, so I hope I can nail it. But if you guys have any questions, if you want to interact or interrupt, you're not interrupting, just ask. And then at the end, if you have any questions or thoughts, please share. I was sharing with Jen earlier that she was asking are you excited about this morning? And I am, because we made this presentation not for the road. We made this presentation for you all this morning. On the road will be wider, but not as deep. It'll be more time. But this is for our gang. It's for our gang at DHR and our friends and for Charlotte. And the number one goal is that it encourages you that no matter where you came from, you can go to wherever you're called to go, guys. And so it's called Relationships Over Rules. Many of you have heard about that already. Book comes out August 1st. The whole point of the book, guys, is that Matthew West has a song out now called Your Story, His Glory. And so the whole point is you all have your own story. And what I want to do is encourage you that you're in real estate, you're in your marketplace for a reason. And I just want to encourage you that you could do a lot more than what you probably imagine with the people that are in your life. Fair enough? So that's the cover. We're just going to move on. We don't need to worry about that. All right. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. If you heard the story, you can just let it gloss over. I'll go really fast. I'm not going to tell you 43 years. I'm going to tell you just the firm foundation, because the next one is your story. Okay, so we're going to get to your story in a second. I'm going to go through my story really fast, but I'm going to do it for two reasons. One, I'm going to do it because you all have faced some strife in your life. You've had adversity 40 years ago, or for the 29-year-olds in the room, maybe a couple of years less than that, or even last Tuesday, or even this morning, you're struggling. And you're okay, I'm not enough, or I can't do it, or I can't reach my dreams. And the world tells you that. I mean, the culture tells you that you can't reach what's possible. So I'm going to share a little bit of my story. I'm going to try to go really fast. I was in Minnesota last year speaking, and I only had 15 minutes. And it was really intimidating because there was 5,000 people there. And it was funny because the security guard said, I was backstage all day long, almost crying, praying, can it just rain so I could just be canceled? And he's like, you want the good news or the bad news? I'm like, give me the bad news. He's like, the bad news is no one's here for you. And they're there for all these big artists, all these big singers. I'm like, okay, what's the good news? He's like, no one's here for you. And I'm like, okay. He's like, no, I'm being serious. No one's here for you, so you can't do anything wrong. Doesn't matter how many people are here. They're not here for you. And you're exactly where you need to be, so just share what you know. Share your story. And it's going to encourage people. So I just want to encourage you that you're not here for me, you're here for you. And my hope is that when I start sharing my story, that's going to remind you of your story, because everyone has a story. Fair enough? And the whole point of the book, guys, the whole point, it is not a memoir. The beginning has a memoir piece to it, just to lay the foundation. They're like, oh, wow, David came from that. If he can do it, if he can move to Charlotte, if he can grow up on dog food and toilet water, if he can come from not having any faith or any loved ones, I can do anything. I was sharing that with a friend the other day. If I can do whatever I'm doing in my life, you can do so much more. Is that fair enough? So I just want to encourage you on that, because when we say because of my past, well, the abuse in your past, the strife in your life, the challenges, you're new to town, you don't know anybody, that's the stories you're telling yourself, but it's not your story. Fair enough? And it's not your potential. So, all right, quick version of my story for the ones that don't know it yet is I'm 43 years old, and my mom, who passed away in 2004, had multiple sclerosis. And so she was told not to have me. She decided to have me. She was warned that she would either die or she would get paralyzed, and she did. She got paralyzed. And so my dad took me away when I was about 2 years old. And then I grew up in a different household. I'd visit my mom a few times a year. But long story short, my mom was the only person in my life that I had a real relationship with. So as a little kid, you don't really have perspective. Then you become an adult and you become a dad, and you're like, wow. So my mom, her husband left, her health went away, and her only child was taken from her. But when I wanted to see my mom, we'd watch Stand By Me and eat combos and cheese balls. And she bought me all the Star Wars figures and Transformers. I wish I had them all today, still in the perfect boxes. But when I saw her, she was smiling all day and night, like as long as I was there. And then I would leave. I'd be there for the few hours, and then I would go back to my house in New York with my new family. But when I was with my mom when I was little, I just thought that's how it was. And the aide would always put her in the chair. She was in a wheelchair, but like help her out of bed, put her in the chair. And I hang out with her for a few hours. As I started getting older, like 8, 9 years old, I started asking a lot more questions. I started asking, like, why am I not with my mom? Because she was so perfect inside out. If she was here today, like, she would look like all of y'all, like, just beautiful physically, like, just mentally. I mean, she never once complained, guys. Like, you know, she passed when I was 24. There's a different story about that, about not having a second regret. You guys all have had a regret, just don't have a second one. So as I'm getting older, I'm starting to ask questions. I'm starting to ask 2 big questions. And it became 3 and then 4 and then 100. And questions are not bad, guys, as long as they haven't been asked before and you're paying attention and you're furthering the conversation. But the first question I started asking is, why can't I live with you? And I would be told, like, well, your mom didn't want you. And I'm thinking, like, that's not what it seems like. And the next question I ask is, like, why is this wonderful person who just loves people unconditionally and never complains, why is she the sick one, you know? And then I'm being raised in this, like, loveless household, and I've learned to forgive 100%. I was like sharing with a new friend back here earlier, Perry, that I was struggling when I wrote the book. My biggest struggle was I didn't want this to be the David show. And so we just kept condensing the story less and less. And the other day, my wife sent me a song, Your Story, His Glory. Like, it's not just our story. It's passing forward to your friends, your family. It's to encourage someone else. So as I'm getting older, guys, I'm talking fast for a reason, and I'll slow down. I'm trying to get through my story fast. As I'm getting older, I'm thinking to myself, you know, I was in my room all the time. I couldn't leave my room during the day. I was jailed in my room. It's weird to say, but it's true. And I've learned to forgive, but there was just not any love in the house. And I had a sister, and we loved each other, but we couldn't cross the threshold. And so I didn't eat a lot. As I got older, the neighbor was a baker. He'd give me baguettes. I'd like stuff them down behind the garage before I'd go in the house. I mean, one story that I have to share, I tried to like take all the personal stuff out of the book. And my agent's like, David, you have way too many details to not share this. I mean, it's all accurate. It's like part of your story. You have to share it because someone else is going through their version, and they need to know that they can break the chains. I remember one day my stepmom was at work, and she came home, and I heard her asking the babysitter, I was probably like 11 or 12 years old, you know, if I left the room. And she's like, yeah, I think he just left the room to use the bath. And I'm like, oh, darn. You know, I wasn't allowed to take baths, you know, very often, or definitely not unsupervised. But I wasn't taking a bath. I was just drinking the bath water because I couldn't go downstairs to get regular water, you know. And I thought if I ran the faucet, you would actually hear it. But like the bath water, oh, he's just taking a bath. And so I got in trouble for that. And for me, getting in trouble was not being able to throw the ball to myself outside before I came inside. You know, I had no friends. My friends were the ones that would, on trick-or-treating, they would be throwing eggs in my house. Like I walked around with my half-sister and my stepmom, and we'd get back to our house. And my friends were throwing eggs in my house. And I'm friends with them now on Facebook, some of them, and like they don't remember any of that. And you know, you have to like remember where you came from, not because your past is who you are. It actually is not your purpose, your potential. But you have to be able to break the chains and move on and deal with any trauma and then get past it. And I've gone through therapy and everything, gone through all that. I did it again with the book. And so now I have like full peace. I even joke at home when my youngest son was little, Knox would go and try to eat the dog food, and Jessica would be like, my wife would say, just because your dad eat dog food doesn't mean you need to, you know? The dog food was because my stepmom would count the pieces of bread and count the pieces of bologna and the crackers, but she didn't count the dog food in the basement, so I would just go there. Now here's the thing, guys. Later you're going to hear about how adversity is a gift. Adversity gives you the perspective for you to be grateful for everything you have. I wouldn't change a day. I wouldn't change a moment of my life outside of my one regret. So, you know, when I was 16, my senior in high school, I moved to Virginia from New York. I grew up in New York City. And I actually grew up like right on the Long Island, Queens line in the same town as Marissa, and a couple miles away, a couple towns away from Jen, and like half the people here apparently. It's kind of funny. It's funny how God brings people together. But my stepmom remarried, and then she became really nice. And I was just so grateful that like I started like eating these great meals and started having friends, and I was allowed to like leave the room, and I was like, and she even said she was sorry like a few years later, and I've forgiven. I haven't talked to her in about 15 years for some other things, but because here's the thing, guys, you have to forgive, but you don't have to keep. Okay, like you have to forgive everyone. You don't have to keep difficult people in your life, right? You have to forgive the toxicity, but you don't have to welcome it back, you know? So I fast forward, I'm going to college at George Mason. I started in a community college because I didn't have any money. I saved up. I went to George Mason afterwards. And I was an econ major because I wanted to be a sports agent because I didn't have the talents to be a professional baseball player. I never got to play much. But I loved people, not because I had any people in my life, but because I didn't. Does that make sense? Again, that adversity, right? Sometimes like what you don't have gives you perspective. One day, without talking to my dad, I talked to myself. I talked to my dad through myself, and I said, Dad, thank you for showing me the dad I don't want to be. Thank you for showing me the husband I don't want to be. You know, nothing happens for circumstance or coincidence, guys. There's a purpose for everything. So anyway, long story short, I go to George Mason. I get an opportunity to be an economist while I'm still in school. And the professor, I talked to him the other day, and I told him about the book, and I just thanked him. He offered me this opportunity, this interview on September 12, 2001. I'm really fast forwarding, guys. I'm trying to get to today real fast. Because this is not about me, this is about you. Okay, so I want to get through this real fast. And I asked him why he gave me this interview, this opportunity. And he said, it's because you ask great questions. I'm like, what's a great question? He's like, it's one that hasn't been asked before, and it's one that furthers the conversation and adds value. That's all I ever want to do is add value. Because I had no one in my life outside my mom, and because I had no friends and I didn't have any real relationships, I really value them. Everyone's like, I go on the road, they're like, oh, you're the relationship guy. I'm like, no, I just appreciate relationships because I never had them. You know, if you think about anything you never had, when you eat dog food, you're really excited about ramen noodles, right? Like when you drink bath water or even toilet water, then you're like, okay, like running water is perfectly fine with me. You know, like there's so many people around this world that have so much less. I grew up with more than so many, and today I have much more than I deserve. So long story short, I got the job. My interview was September 12th, 2001, and I probably got the job because I actually showed up in Washington, D.C. on September 12th, 2001. The chief economist called me on September 11th, was like, you're not coming tomorrow, right? I was like, why not? I mean, I know what happened today. It's horrible. He's like, wait, you're actually coming tomorrow? Aren't you a 20-year-old? I was a senior in college. And I was like, yep. And I was like, if you knew my story, like, I'm going to be there. Now, if you're not going to be there, I understand. But he's like, you're actually going to come? He's like, we had 3 other interviews. They all canceled. I was like, hey, I've never had an opportunity like this. I've never had someone give me a chance. I've had no one ever believe in me except for my mom. I'm going to be there. So I was there that morning, September 12th, so I got the job. Fast forward, we got a call at that think tank at the Tax Foundation where I worked as an economist. And it was on how athletes are taxed when they travel. And they're like, Dave, you love sports, right? Like, you were going to, be a sports agent? Or I was like, well, no, I like sports. I never got to really play them. I had to throw the ball to myself. I was Joe Montana and Jerry Rice, Like, I mean, it's true, man. Like, I mean, I thought I was really good in my own head. Like, I mean, I would throw the ball and then I would catch it. And, I mean, Perry, you're a star football player, man. Like, man, I was probably throwing the ball to you. You just weren't there. So when I dropped it, it was a foul. When I caught it, I was Jerry Rice. So I became the expert. You know how I became the expert, guys? I knew nothing. That's how I became the expert. I knew nothing about how athletes were taxed. It's called the jock tax. And so I became the expert by knowing nothing. Because when you know what you don't know, that's when the magic happens, right? Like I grew up with no relationships. So I'm like, oh, wow, like any relationship that's positive and not toxic is a blessing for me. What a gift. Any friend. We'll get to that in a second. And so I just sort of became the expert. And next thing you know, agents are calling and athletes, and I'm on like ESPN and Wall Street Journal, and like I'm getting opportunities to maybe go to law school and sports firm and agencies and everything. And I'm getting ready to speak at the Sports and Entertainment Law Conference in 2004, in May of 2004. But then I got a call from my stepmom, and she was like, hey, how are you doing? I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird. She's like, oh, I just wanted to catch up. I'm like, this is really odd. I haven't talked to you in years. And she's like, oh, well, I forgot to tell you. She told me some other random stuff that didn't really matter. And she's like, your mom died today. And I was shocked. And we've all lost loved ones. But see, 3 weeks earlier, I was on the phone with her, and she was so proud of me because I was becoming a sports agent, and I was this like hotshot economist. And now, guys, you have to remember, like growing up the way I did, and many of y'all have, the world owed me something. So at this point, I had an earring in each ear, and I was trying to be in a boy band. I just didn't have the talents, and I was trying to be a sports agent, but I was really cool. The world owed me so much. I had this spiky blonde hair. I mean, like maybe it was like, no, when I worked at the Tax Foundation, they told me, keep the earrings in, be yourself. The expert doesn't look like anyone else. They look like themselves, right? They just know what they know and they don't know. But I was on the phone with my mom around the holidays of 2003. My mom was so proud of me, she said. And she's like, I just want to see you. And I'm in D.C., and she's in New York City. I mean, she never moved out of her apartment in Staten Island. And I was like, I'm going to come visit you, Mom. Well, 3 weeks later, she dies. Now, I have no idea if she knew how sick she was and just didn't want me to worry, or if she didn't know. I mean, I won't find that out until I get to heaven. Can't wait to see my mom again. You're all going to see your loved ones again. Hope you know that. And she's dancing right now, and she's running free. I really believe that. But that's my one regret in life. I mean, I said I was going to visit my mom, and then I just said, the world owes me a lot. I'll get around to it. I didn't even think twice, because everyone lives to be 90, right? Isn't that like how life works? My mom was 52, dark brown hair. I get to the funeral. I rushed there. I get to the funeral, open casket. I'm like, holy cow. And again, we've all lost loved ones, probably many times. It's not a story of tragedy, but there is regret. And I just couldn't stop crying for days, because I cannot believe I told you I was going to come see you. You're the one person that loved me unconditionally, and I didn't. So I'm getting ready to speak at the Sports and Entertainment Law Conference a few months later, and I'm going through my bills because my friend was making fun of me for always wanting to be early for things. But I always want to be early for things, guys, because if I'm early, I don't have it taken away from me, right? Like, if I'm early on September 12th, 2001, I have a chance for that job. If I'm early for the listing appointment, if I'm early for that first date with my future bride, like, I have a chance. Like, because when you don't have much, like, if you're first in line at the grocery store, like, they don't run out of tomatoes for you, and like, you get your loaf of bread. When you have little, you just appreciate everything. That's where the adversity creates that perspective that breeds gratitude. And that's the greatest gift, guys. To be honest, my little boys, I got a 6-year-old and 9-year-old, and my biggest concern for them is that they don't appreciate, what they do have and how much that we don't deserve that they have, and so we try to teach them service. So I'm going through my bills, and I'm going to spend a couple days in Baltimore, Maryland, speaking at this conference. And guys, this is like Scott Boras and Drew Rosenhaus and all these big sports agents. And like there was a law firm, there was a sports agency firm that was going to bring me on, and there was like a law firm, and there was just all these amazing opportunities, and all these athletes, and all these entertainers. And then there was like little old me. And I'm going through my bills, and I'm thinking, like, I'm just going to pay them. I'm trying to get ahead of things. I'm grateful to pay bills, guys, to be honest, because that means that you have a home, you have utilities, you have running water, and you've made enough money to actually pay them, right? And I come across a reminder card for an MS walk, and it was that next day, same day. And guys, I was so selfish at this time. I was so self-righteous. I mean, it was all about me, because for so long, like, I hated God. And even at this time, and I was like, I deserve something. He took the one person away from me, my mom. And it was an MS walk, and it was the next day. So I just emailed the dean, the person leading the Sports and Entertainment Law Conference. And then the response I got, I didn't really want to read. I mean, it probably wasn't the best one. If anyone who's in business, real estate, you get that call from the appraiser or the agent or the client, and you're like, yeah, maybe I need a glass of wine before I check this voicemail. That's what it was like. But I had peace. I couldn't have a second regret. And so I picked, my friends remind me, I picked, the walk over the talk. Well, that was in DC, and so that just changed everything, because I burnt bridge. I'm not saying to burn a bridge, but you just can't have a second regret. The one thing you cannot do is have a second regret. If you have a purpose, you have to follow a purpose to your true potential. And so my friends were like, well, what are you going to do now? You're not going to be a sports agent. It seems like you just burnt all these bridges by one decision. And I was like, I don't know. They're like, well, you love relationships. It's kind of ironic, the one who didn't have any relationships loves relationships. It's like, you like people. I'm actually kind of an introvert. So why don't you get into real estate? Because they thought I was smart, guys. This is 2004. I was like buying a couple condos in Myrtle Beach with access checks. I was like stealing from Peter to pay Paul. I made $27,000 as an economist. It sounded like a great job. It was a great job, great opportunity. But I was making $27,000 a year in DC. It's probably the other reason I got that job is that, like, for me, $27,000, holy cow. I mean, when I grew up on $27,000, I was like, I don't even care if you pay me. Like, just give me room and board, right? I was living in a studio. I didn't need a lot. When you come from little, like, you appreciate everything. So long story short, my friends thought I was really smart with real estate. I wasn't, but I'd said to the mortgage broker, someone not as good as you, Teresa, but this is back in 2004, when you can do whatever you want, right? You guys remember 2004, even if you weren't in real estate, 2004. I said I made $27,000. The mortgage broker's like, you mean 72,000? I'm like, no, I said 27. We're going to put down 72. The income doesn't really matter. You have good credit. And so, like, I didn't really know what I was doing, guys. And so, anyway, long story short, I was dating a young lady who I proposed to after my mom died, and she broke it off because her friend convinced her that I was just heartbroken, which I was. And so she moved to Charlotte. So to be honest, like, I chased her. I'm not even with her today, obviously. That's not Jessica. And I chased her down to Charlotte. And I said I was going to get into real estate, and I picked a home online that had a big truck in the front of the townhouse with a box. And actually, Charlie, you're probably one of the first humans I met in Charlotte back in 2005. Holy cow. And there was a big box in the front yard, a big cable box about the size of the yard, but there was a big truck in front of it. And bless that, I learned to say, like, bless your heart. Like, growing up in New York, it took me a while. That agent, the agent probably didn't realize there was a box behind there, but there was. And so when the truck moved away, that was the whole front yard. Again, I didn't care. I was just so grateful. But I was buying a home before I even got here. And I said, I'm just going to make it in real estate. And so anyway, I'm driving down to Charlotte. Last thing I'll say, I'm going to move to your story. I hope this whole time you're thinking about your own story. When I'm driving down to Charlotte, I'm thinking to myself, what on earth am I doing? And I was tying up property up in D.C. with some of my good friends. And like I had all these opportunities, like I was saying. And I'm moving to Charlotte. And I'm thinking I'm moving to Lake Norman, North Carolina, because I was moving to Huntersville. And so I'm telling people I'm moving back home, like I'm moving to Lake Norman, North Carolina. And they're like Googling it. And I think back then it was like Ask Jeeves or something, or Yahoo, the AOL Instant Messenger. It was a long time ago. And they're like, Dave, I don't think Lake Norman's a town. Like I think that's a lake. And I was not the expert, guys. Like I was definitely not the expert. I was like, no, I think I'm moving to Lake Norman. Like, no, I think you're moving to a town called Huntersville that is near a body of water called Lake Norman. I'm like, oh boy. Like I have no idea what I'm doing. And I don't know real estate. I don't. But I'm thinking to myself, but I really appreciate people. I appreciate good people that just do the best that they can. So if I can make one friend, I have a chance. That's all I care about. And I was thinking about my friends back home. Some of them, I have a guys trip coming up. I do every year. They're some of my closest friends now. And I love them. I mean, I love them to death. And like, they can watch my kids. My kids may end up with like paint all over them. And they may end up with like 9 fingers and toes. But they can. But I don't know if I'd want all of them maybe managing my money. Like, bless you. I don't know if I'd want all of them like giving me like life coaching, maybe at this point, but not back then. So I was like, how do I become the expert? I need to become the expert. And then I was thinking about my dad. Like when my mom got sick, what did he do? He ran, right? And then when it got hard, what did he do? He left me too, and he left me behind. Now I'm grateful I didn't go with my dad, but it wasn't any better there. So I was like, I need to be present. And so our 3 guiding principles, guys, like, and at this point, I'm still hating God because I'm thinking like, you gave me nothing. So like, you took away my mom, you took away my dad, you took away any friends, any happiness, and now my career, like you took away my fiance, like I have nothing. But I'm just gonna make one friend. That's all I care about. I'm just gonna make one friend. I'm just gonna give that friend so much. I'm gonna walk in a mile in that friend's shoes. I'm just gonna go as far as I can with that friend. And I'm gonna give more than I take. Because I had none, guys. I had my friends in DC, I just left after growing up with none. So for me, like that friend meant so much. And so I moved to Charlotte and the rest is kind of like history. I got back together with that young lady. We actually got married. And I actually ended up living next door to Ric Flair. And then we're going through a divorce, and I was taking Ric Flair out for his 60th birthday, and I met my wife. And it's funny how it works, because I actually almost moved to Florida, and I also moved to California. I was like heads Carolina, tails California. I was like allowed to split the difference and move to Florida. And so it's funny how it all works, but all of that I'm going to fast forward. So I'm going to shut up now and keep going. And then shut this off. Oh, this is, guys, if there's ever a moment as you go through this where it's like da-da-da, like you want to cry or laugh or cheer that we're done, this is when we're going to do it, and we're just going to have a moment because we're all friends here. I want it to be authentic. Guys, you have your story. I just gave you 43 years in about 15 minutes, but I gave you a few of the highlights. There's a lot of positives. Like, that was all positive. There's a lot more there, just like there's a lot more for all of you, but this is not my story. This is your story. So I hope that in that time, you were able to spend a little bit of time thinking about your own story. How you got, Leon, when you and I first met, man, you were an open book with me, man. Like, you told me about your story. And that doesn't hold you down. It just shows you, it just shows you what's possible because of where you came from. And Brad, I've known you more than like most people. And everyone in this room, we don't have time to point everyone out, but like I was saying to Jen earlier, like, you guys mean so much to me. And so I need you to realize that your story is so important. And when the world gets busy and social media and the news, and like now the whole world's watching this plane with this man who's flying to New York from Florida, like, it's not that important, guys. Like, politics aren't that important, and business from one day to next may not be that important. But in the moment, wherever you are is most important, and you can change lives. I really believe that real estate is life or death, and whatever your marketplace is life or death. But it's your story. I believe that as we go through life, we're told, like, well, I can't do this. I had these dreams, but I can't do it because I moved to a new city, or my marriage didn't work out, or I've got a tough child I'm dealing with, or money's really tight, or like, well, I'm an older male or a younger female and society says I can't do it, or I'm not from America, or I'm this color or that. And it's hard. And I can't imagine what each and every one of you go through. I attempt to walk a mile in your shoes. That's why when I check in and when I reach out to anyone who's my friend, there's no ulterior motive. I was telling Brian that this morning. I was like, man, I'm not talking to you about business right now. I was just checking in with you as a friend and a partner. It's your story, guys. Your story was not for you to wake up with anxiety. Your story is not for you to say, I had a dream as a child, but maybe I'll do it in my next life. We don't get a second life. You don't get a second regret. If you had your one regret, you're done. If you haven't had your one regret, try not to have the one. It says no regrets. No. You're going to have a regret. My whole life is lessons learned, mistakes made. So I want to share some of them this morning. But I'm going to keep saying this. And that Bible verse is up there in the conference room, because if I had $1 for every time someone says, how do I make more money, more dollars? You know what you do? You realize that God has a plan for each of you, and it's for you to prosper and for you to reach your true potential because of your story. Does that make sense? Like, see, your story is so important, guys. The only reason I shared my story is so you can relate to your story. And you know, maybe you had strife in your life 30, 40, 50 years ago, or maybe you woke up this morning with challenges. And whatever they are, I just want to encourage you, if I can help, if someone else can help, there's people that God has placed in your life that are there to help you reach your true potential. I promise you that. So our 3 leading principles of a true relationship, and many of y'all, especially at DHR, like you see these every day, we talk about them, but I just wanted to kind of land the plane a little bit, and we'll get back in the sky of why they're so important. You know, be the friend, be the expert, be present. And guys, this conversation is, you know, kind of pointed towards real estate, towards business, but really this is for any relationship. This is for anyone who's in your life. Be the friend. When I was driving down to Charlotte, I was thinking to myself, well, I don't know anything about real estate, and I have no friends. It's like my goal is not to like have everyone like me. I'm not a people pleaser. I'm a God pleaser. And like my goal is if someone's in my life, I'm gonna give you everything I got, and I'm gonna make mistakes. I'm gonna do my best. But my goal then was just to make one friend. I just wanted to make one friend. And I thought to myself, like, how do I actually be the friend? See, like everyone's heard about the 5 love languages, right? What an amazing book. I love it. But the number one teaching tool and principle there is it's about them, not you. And how do you be a friend if 30 days have gone by, you don't know how to celebrate something in their lives, or you don't know how to help them with their challenge? Just like each and every one of us has our own challenges from our own story, your friends have their own story. So we think we have friends because we message with them on Facebook, and we see them at the ballpark, and we see them, you know, we saw them at a wedding, or we saw them once a year at a gathering, or you see them at the grocery store, or maybe you comment on their Instagram things. But do you really know what's important to them? Or we're too, well, I mean, David, how do I have time for my life and their life? How do I have time about my kids and their kids? Well, like they're in your life for a reason, right? And if they're not your friend, they're not your friend. So you might say, like, well, I don't know what's the most important. I can't communicate their way. I do text. I can't do phone calls. I do phone calls. I can't do drop-bys. I do drop-bys. I'm not going to do an email. It's not what I do. Like, I'm an extrovert. I'm an introvert. I do instant message. Like, I do mass email. I do mass posts. Like, I do wine. Well, they don't drink. Well, I don't drink, but they do. Like, I do flowers. They need the wine. Like, you don't need the wine. Like, they want flowers, but I don't like flowers. I'm allergic to flowers. That's okay, then they're not your friend. Let's just be honest with ourselves. I think we have more friends than we do, and the ones that are the true friends are the ones that we ignore. We take them for granted. We do it in our marriage. We do it with our kids. We do it with our spouses, our partners. We do it with our real friends. And then the ones that we're chasing that next client. And then during the transaction, and again, this is for, I'm going to go in and out of real estate, guys. Like some of this can be real estate, some will be business, some of this will be in your marriage, in your relationships at home, your partnerships. You give good service during the transaction. You know, you're dating in the infatuation phase. Then the closing happens. Then you get married. And you put on Instagram, you put on Facebook how honored and grateful you are that you had the big closing, that the wedding day is great. And then you're like, well, I never need to buy you flowers again until I'm late. Because then when I'm late, I'll buy you flowers. And when I make a mistake, I'll help you with the transaction again. But during the transaction, that person, that family, that real estate transaction was everything for them, right? For them, that young lady, that young man picked you to marry them. And then as soon as you get married, you're like, okay, now it's back to work. Now it's back to looking at other people. Now it's back to thinking of what I don't have because the grass is always greener. Now it's back to the next transaction. But for them, this is everything, guys. Regardless if it's marriage, regardless if it's your kids, or if it's a real estate transaction, good service is good. It's okay. Actually, it's not great. And to be honest, it's not always good because the best relationships are the ones where on day one, you're like, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to give you the best service I can, but like, it's not going to be perfect. I'm going to be the best husband or wife I can be, the best dad or mom or son or daughter or friend I can be. It's not going to be perfect. I'm going to show you all my quirks now. I'm going to show you everything, like my faith structure, what I believe in politics and religion and sports and business and finance and sex. I'm going to talk to you about my trauma and my past. I'm going to talk to you about everything. When you give all this amazing communication and you communicate their way in the beginning, but then when there's nothing to gain, when you stop, are we really being a friend? If your spouse is not your best friend, maybe we need to look in the mirror. And so I want to challenge you. You probably have friends that you're ignoring and taking for granted, and then you have people you're probably giving your all to because there's something to gain. And so first of all, I'd like to challenge you to flip that. You know, we'll talk a little bit later about like living without an agenda, going to meetings without an agenda. It sounds easy, and it really is. You know, Beth and I have talked about this. Heather helps me a lot with the calendar, and Marissa too. And like one day we were talking about like, well, why does David have all these coffees? I don't know. Like, well, will they buy a home? Maybe. Will they sell a home? Potentially. Do their kids need help? I don't know. Does the husband need a job? Maybe the wife? How do I know? You know, I had a breakfast a few years back with an old client. He's like, Dave, why are we meeting? Like, I already bought a home. I'm not moving. I'm like, I don't know. Like, you're in my life. He's like, well, you gave really good service. I just want to thank you for that. I'm like, yeah, it's good, but you also paid me, right? Like, that's a transaction. Now the relationship's when the transaction ends, and he starts crying. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, you know, I'm living in the basement. I'm about to lose my 2 girls. Like, I haven't been unfaithful physically with my marriage, but I haven't been a present husband. I was like, well, that's why I'm here then, I guess. And this like 6'4", like big, successful, stocky man is like crying. He's like, I can't tell people at work. I can't tell my friends because I'm the perfect husband and father. And I want to be, but I'm not. And I was like, well, that's why I'm here then, man. Like, I didn't think you were selling a house. Like, you just bought it like last Tuesday, right? So anyway, you have people in your life that are your real friends that we're ignoring. And you have people in your life that maybe they're not supposed to be your friends. But if they're placed in your life, they're there for a reason. Maybe it's just for a season. But I just want to encourage you that it's communicating their way. It's like, well, this is what I do. I do mass emails. I do text. That's not what they do, guys. I just want to encourage you that that's not what they do. You have to add value and understand their challenges. And this seems really obvious. And so I share with you my story to remind you of your story, to lay the foundation of why, you know, this is so important for me? Because no one understood my challenges except for my mom. Like, no one was trying to add value in my life. You know, no one was communicating my way. I was always talking to myself. But if you're being a friend, then you're making it about them, not you. Does that make sense? Treat others how they want to be treated, always adding value. Meet them where they are. Give more than you take. Dig deep to learn more and more. I love digging deeper and deeper, guys. Like, I was trying to pick up weeds the other day, and I was trying to rushing it because my kids were running around the yard and running in the street and making a mess with the mulch. So I was kind of doing it haphazardly. I wasn't really the expert at pulling the weeds. And I was kind of just using my hands. I wasn't using a big shovel. I didn't have a big plan in place. It was kind of rushed. So I didn't dig that deep. And so I didn't get the whole weed. So you can't really see it, but it's like a mess. You can kind of see the bottom of the weed. I mean, Jennifer, you're like an expert in nursery. You'd be like, oh no, you did it the wrong way. You didn't get all the way down to the root. And so I didn't get down to the root. I didn't dig deep enough to the root. I'm like, well, no, I'm just going to assume I know what they need. I just have a lot going on right now. I don't have time to dig that deep with everyone. Well, then they're not a friend, guys. Let's just be honest with ourselves. The most I can do for my friend is simply be his friend or her friend. Be the expert. There's so much more there, but I just wanted to remind you, to encourage you, to ask you, are you really being a friend? Are you making it about them or you? Are you communicating their way or your way? Are you meeting them where they are or enabling them to meet you where you are? Are you being a friend or is it just a transaction? Because again, guys, the relationship's outside the transaction. It's before the transaction begins. It's during the transaction, even if there's nothing to gain. Sometimes it's a bad deal. If it's not a good deal, you need to walk away from the deal and make sure your client walks away. And then it's after the transaction ends when there's nothing to gain. So be the expert. Now, this is more real estate. When I started, you know, I didn't know anything. I really didn't about real estate. And so I just brought a little notepad and I just drove around where I lived and I'd make a little circle. And then I would drive a little more and make a little more circle. And then I'd drive a little more. And each time I made a circle, I'd go back to my iPad. And it was not an iPad, guys. If anyone knows me, I had a Palm Central up until like 4 years ago. You know, I think it was like a T-Mobile Sidekick or something. And I would just Google, I would look on the MLS, I'd look at good deals and bad deals. And so I was like, wait, why is that price so high? Why is that price so low? Oh, okay, it's this side of the street, it's that side of the street, it's this school district, it's that one. Why is the HOA fee so high? Why does that one have a special assessment? And I was thinking to myself, I'm not going to be a good friend if I'm not the expert. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story. I had these clients back in '05, and they were looking for this home in Montclair, which is really popular now. Well, all the homes were 250 to 275, and I found this home for 150. And I'm like, guys, like it was Keith and Scott. I was like, guys, these investors, like, you guys got to buy this house. It's amazing. It's 150. And they text me, and they're like, hey, Dave, we're both in meetings, man. Like, just text us the information. We'll look at it. So I did. And they're like, Dave, isn't that Montclair South? And I'm thinking, what? Because I'm not the expert. I'm trying to be the expert. And you're not a friend if you're not the expert. And I was like, I don't know. What do you? I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going to ask them. I was like, I guess I'm not the expert. I mean, I was the expert in the taxation of non-resident professional athletes in DC, but I'm definitely not the expert in real estate. So I Google Montclair South, and they're like, Montclair South is on the other side of South Boulevard, on that side of Old Pineville. It's literally on the other side of the tracks. It's a very popular community today, but it was on the other side of the tracks. And there was like a murder the week before, and now it's a very popular community. This is 2005. And so then I go on the MLS, and I'm looking, and I put in Montclair South. I didn't just put Montclair. And like the price point's like 120 to 150. So 150 was actually high. And I was like, yes, it's Montclair South. I was not being present. I did not know, because I'm not the expert. They're like, yeah, have a nice life. Never talk to those clients again. That's just a quick, guys, if I had $1 for every mistake I made, I could afford to make more mistakes. Broker relations, guys, when we say we sell homes above market value, you know why? It's because we've built decades of broker relationships that are authentic, where we meet people where they are, we walk a mile in their shoes, and they trust us. They trust that the property is not going to have paint over an issue. We trust that the property is not going to have loud music and it backs to a highway, and we're not going to put up trees to block the prison. The brokers trust us, and so when prices are high, they're like, it's worth it. And then when they get in there, they fall in love because we're the experts and we know, but it's because the brokers trust us, and they're not going to beat us up. They're not going to be like, are you sure you want $3 million for that house? I'm like, well, that's the number we put on there. And they're not going to beat us up on comps because they realize that either the listing agent made that decision or the seller did. So they either tell me that I don't know what I'm doing, or they tell me my seller doesn't. Which one of them builds relationships? So they don't do it, okay? So that's how you become the expert. And this is for all walks of life, guys. And then economic analysis. Many of you know I used to be an economist. I just shared that story. Guys, we talked about the state of the market a couple months ago. I told you that this year is going to be rocky, and you're seeing it. Like, it's rocky, right? Like, you're seeing the low price points. You're starting to see people put their house on the market. You're seeing the mid price points is like the sweet spot. And you're seeing over $1 million, before $1.5 million. They're starting to get sensitive if it's not flawless. And the real high price points, if it's flawless, still going above because they don't care for another year. But you're seeing the stock market kind of getting rocky. Gold's still going up. It's the only thing people can trust on. If you're not the economist of choice, find one. Just do not fake it till you make it, guys. You can fake it till you make it on the ball field when you're a kid. My little guys, they work hard in the field. I think half the time they're fake it to make it because they look cute and they're running hard. And that's what you have to do when you're young. You just like look cute and run hard. As long as you put your best foot forward, that's all that matters. But you can't fake it to make it in life, guys. We don't live that long. Going back to your story, you were not put here to fake it till you make it. You were not put here to just go through the transaction, forget about the relationship, and move on to next, and then ask yourself, like, how come I have no business? How come I have no relationships? Well, because you never built relationships. If we're not being the expert, lead with knowledge, passion, experience, wisdom, and value. Guys, the first three, do you know the difference between knowledge and wisdom? Knowledge is up here. We're all given knowledge through life. And passion is part of the heart. Experience comes from time. Wisdom is in your heart, and value and passion is in your heart. We all have knowledge, we all have data, we all have life experiences. That's in our head. That's memory, that's a memory bank. What we have to do is get it from here about 18 inches down to here where we know what to do with it. And if we're focusing on being the friend, if we're focused on giving more than we take, then if you're not the expert, then we need to become the expert in all aspects of life. Forget about real estate, this is in your marriage. Forget about marriage with your kids, with your neighbors, with anyone in your life. Are you making it about them? Or are you just passing forward what you're reading on social media, or just doing whatever gets a transaction done, or just gets you either $1 or gets you on your vacation or gets you to be able to go to bed at night? You just check a box. Are we moving the knowledge, experience, and data to being the value and wisdom? And passion, guys, goes back to your story. See, the reason I'm so passionate about relationships over rules, because the rules in the world say that if you came from a past with abuse, that you can't break the chains and you can't get out of abuse. The rules say that if you're new to Charlotte, you can't soar in your business here. The rules say that if you're divorced or if you're single, if you don't have parents, if you don't have kids, like the rules say that if you're too old or too young, the rules say what's possible, right? And I hope that each and every one of us, I want to remind you, I'm only one of the however many are in this room right now, we all are a life example that the relationships in your life, which starting with me in 2009 is with God in the center, the relationships that are put in your life with your friends, your spouses, your parents, your kids, your clients, your neighbors. I mean, guys, for those that are in real estate in the room, they picked you over 14,000 other people in the Charlotte MLS, and we just run through the transaction. We look on the whiteboard. Well, this deal didn't work out, but that one did. That deal didn't work out, but maybe this one did. For them, it's everything. Why are we not using our passion? I'm so passionate about relationships because I never had them. I'm so passionate about giving my all to anyone in my life because I felt like I was never given a fair chance. You know, one person who loved me was taken away from me. I was taken away from her. And so I just value what I never had. You know, when I didn't have clean water, I did at times, like, you know, at breakfast I had puffed rice with a little water in it. You know, at school I had the faucet water. I had one glass of milk that stayed in the refrigerator as long as it lasted, and I would drink that over a few days. But so now I just appreciate. This is the reason why, like, I want to go out for meals with people all the time, and I want to have coffee all the time, and I want to meet people all the time. Because when I met my wife, she's like, why do you meet with so many people all the time? And I was like, because they're saying yes. Like, why wouldn't I? I'm grateful for each of you. Be present. Guys, this is an easy one. It's the hardest and the easiest one of everything. Be present. Being present is showing up early and making eye contact and not being distracted here and not focusing on the knowledge and experience of what happened 10 minutes earlier with a bad experience. Another reason why I show up early for things, guys, so I can shift energy. Regardless if I'm having a bad experience in a business transaction or with one of my kids or something's going wrong with finances or life in general, because no one lives a perfect life, not one person. No matter what Instagram and TikTok tell you, it's not perfect, it's filtered, and they spent 3 weeks working on it, they edited it 4 times, and then when they're done editing, they did it again, they hired someone to make it better. Like, we're trying to hire like social media people to tell everyone how perfect everything is, because when we do it, and actually probably sometimes good is enough, right? The enemy of good doesn't need to be great. Thank you for you all being present. You come prepared, this is so obvious. Monthly personal touches, purposeful touches. Focus on your client. And again, respond for your next meal. I'm going to focus on the last one. Focus on your client's important. Some of this is a business conversation. Some of this is a life conversation. Respond for your next meal has really helped me in life. In life, guys, when I first started in real estate, I was like, I need to jump. If they say jump, I ask how high. If they call me at 9, I'm answering at 9. If they call me at 9:01, I'm apologizing if it's 9:02. Now I thank them for the call when I call them back at 11:57. Because if you respond for your next meal, you can be present where you are. No one is the secretary for all of your clients and friends and family members' lives. And if you respond for your next meal, you can go to your meal knowing you checked off the box of getting back to anyone in your life, and then go to the meal not thinking you're too busy. So it's practical, but it's also reasonable, and they respect your schedule once you respect your schedule. It always goes back to your story, guys. You're not here to just chase and chase and chase until you either die in your sleep at 92 or get cardiac arrest at 56 and think, like, maybe I get a second chance, or maybe I became the widowmaker. Like, we have all faced tragedy. The number one leading cause of death is stress. Leading cause of stress is finances. It's not that important, guys. I went a month without looking at the bank account because I was coaching someone a few years ago, and he was really discouraged that money was tight. Then a few months later, he was really encouraged. He's like, man, things are great. I just had like 5 closings in the last week. Things are awesome. I'm like, okay. He's like, you don't sound as excited as Whitney and I. I'm like, well, 6 months ago, you told me how bad things are. He's like, yeah, but now things are awesome. Things are great. Things are wonderful. I just paid off some of my credit cards. I'm like, that's good. I'm proud of you. I'm happy for you. But it's no better to be joyful in much if you're going to be discouraged when you think you have little when it comes to money, right? Like, if money is the barometer of your joy, they're both bad. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, you look at your bank account and you see a lot, you're happy. You look at your bank account and you see little, you're not. He's like, what am I going to do? I was like, well, it's April 27th. I'm going to give you 3 days to get your finances in order, because the month of May, you're not looking at your bank account. I just did that in February. He said, well, I can't do that. He did it. On May 30th, he texted me. He's like, hey, man, I'm so sorry. I made it 1 day short. And long story short, my wife got a call that like a mortgage wasn't paid. They actually made a mistake. They did get it. I was like, yeah, man, I told you they didn't make the call. All you do is answer the phone. They're not going to kick you out. And, you know, if you miss a payment, they're going to call you. You might have to pay an $18 fee. Guys, I'm not your financial advisor. And you guys like, wait, I actually came to this talk this morning to hear this random guy in a suit up there tell me not to pay my bills. No. It'll teach you lots of lessons, guys. On a small scale, it'll teach you that maybe you have to get your finances in order before June 1st. On a big scale, it'll show you where you're putting your focus. Are we being present with the person that's placed in front of us, or are we being present on our phone and our bank account all day long? There we go. The person in front of you is either your top priority at the moment or they aren't. There's no other option. Which do you choose? A few years ago, I was in a lunch. When I got out of the lunch, I felt my phone vibrating, but I don't look at my phone in meetings. When I got out of the lunch, my wife had called me like 9 times. And there's like 3 messages, call immediately. So now I'm like worried, right? So I call and I was like, is everything okay? She's like, it is now. And I was like, well, what happened? She's like, well, Kane fell down the stairs. And Kane's 9, but he was not 9, guys. He was like 4. I'm like, is he okay? She's like, yeah, but why didn't you answer? I'm like, well, I didn't look at my phone. And my wife asked me, she's like, was that more important than this? I was like, well, that's a loaded question, just because at the end of the day, if you're not present where you are, you're present nowhere. So unless I'm sitting there, I trust you, and you took care of our son, you're good. So I was being focused where I was being present where I was, and we both agreed, we understood. And I was like, just like vice versa, I don't ask you all day long, is everything okay, because I trust you. You don't ask me if everything's okay all day long because you trust me. You have to focus where you are, guys, or you're not being the friend. So this is one of the most important things I can share, is that most people in life think, well, if I'm being present in my marriage, I'm good. I mean, I'm paying attention, but I'm not paying attention, right? Like I'm there, but I'm listening as a child, but I'm not obeying. I'm hearing as a husband, but I'm not really listening. I'm giving acts of service when they want physical touch. I'm giving or asking for physical touch when they want acts of service. In business, I hear it all the time. It's like, well, I just tell everyone that I'm always available. I'm always available. Go back to respond for your next meal. No, they don't want you to always be available. They just want you to be present. Don't apologize when you're late. Thank them for being patient with you, and just be early next time. Because when you apologize for being late, when you apologize for keeping someone waiting, you're basically asking them for a second time to forgive you when you already kept them waiting. It's still going back to us. It needs to be about them if we're going to be a friend. But in business, guys, let's just focus on real estate for a second. When I started, being the friend was not enough, because it's in real estate, it's in business, it's in all aspects of life. In all aspects of life, you hear all the time that people don't want to mix business and personal. Guys, there's nothing further from the truth. There's nothing further from the truth. If you're in a relationship right now, you want your significant other, your husband, your wife, your spouse, you want your partner to be your best friend. You want your financial advisor right now to be your best friend. In 2008, my financial advisor was not my best friend. And when I said, I think I need to stop putting money in, the receptionist just said, well, Mr. Johnson's on the golf course. I don't think she said golf course, but that's where he was. And but he said dollar cost averaging, because when the market's going down, you just keep buying. And then when it goes back up, you'll be really happy. So I did that, but I was like, this doesn't make sense, because you don't know how long the market's going to go down. I'm going to go broke. And what I heard without hearing it, because sometimes what's not said is actually more important than what is said, is like, well, Mr. Johnson's with the 8 real friends he has, telling them to pull out all their money before 2009 happens. And for the rest of them, so he can still get his 1% on the millions of dollars he manages, he's telling you this dollar cost averaging. And so everyone wants their best friend to be their real estate agent. Everyone wants their best friend to be their mortgage broker. They want their best friend to be their husband or wife. They want their best friend to be whoever their service provider is, because then that's one person that trusts them the most. The challenge is, if anyone, for all the men in the room, remember back at college when you had a girl you liked and you were like her best friend, but she never dated you and you were like the teddy bear, it's because she didn't see you as husband material. Either like you told her all your crazy stories at the frat house, or she just thought you were silly and you're her best friend, but you weren't the expert husband. Does that make sense? They want to marry their best friend, but they don't see you as husband material, or you're always on your phone, and you're always out of town, and you're always showing up late and leaving early, and you're not focused, you're not hearing what's not being said. So when someone says they don't mix business and personal, it's because they either think you're too new, you're not the expert, they know you care, but they don't know how much you know. But they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So sometimes you're the expert, not the friend. Sometimes you're the friend, but not the expert. Are you being present? So most people do one. Some very successful people do two. The secret sauce is to always be present, to always be working on being the expert, and always being the friend. Does that make sense? I want to go back here for one more time. Guys, before the book, I had a whole day, went really deep on what we just talked about. And we would always land the plane with this conversation. Because regardless if it's in your marriage, if it's in any relationship, regardless if it's in real estate, most people, if anyone's a sports fan, Tom Brady, why was he the best? He was the best not because he had the best arm. That was probably Joe Montana. He was the best not because he worked the hardest. That was probably Michael Jordan, right? Who worked harder than Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant? I don't know in football, maybe Tom Brady was the best for working the hardest. He got there. He wasn't there coming out of college because he was young. He was the best because he was one of the best at all of them. He was the best in the locker room. He was the best leader for his teammates. He was the best leader for his coaches. The players wanted to win for Tom Brady because they wanted to play for Tom Brady. His whole career, Randy Moss. There's so many guys that would come to play with Tom Brady. Coach Belichick always wanted to coach Tom Brady. Players wanted to work under Tom Brady. No one competed with Tom Brady. They all wanted to work with Tom Brady. And so if you're a sports fan, like, he wasn't just the best arm. You know, Cam Newton was like one of the best runners ever. But what happened when he couldn't run as fast anymore? He never worked on his arm, and he wasn't a leader in the locker room. So he thought, well, just running hard enough would go far. Well, got him about 5 years in the league, and then what happened? In real estate, we always think like, well, everyone knows I'm always around, and I'm putting mailers in everyone's mailbox, and I'm on all the billboards, and I'm always sending emails, and I'm always reaching out. Everyone knows I'm always around. Well, and then they tell you, like, well, I don't want to miss business and personal. You know, Mike and I had a real bad experience, Becky, many years ago. You know, Dave, like, we just had a really bad experience. You're such a good friend. I'd hate to hurt the friendship. Wait, I hate to hurt the friendship by trusting your best friend with one of the most important, intimate, we just said, leading cause of death is stress, leading cause of stress is finances. You don't trust me with your finances? That's actually what they're saying. You know, you don't trust me to watch your kids? That's like, who doesn't want their best friend to watch their kids? Who doesn't want their best friend to be in the operating room? For anyone who's new in real estate in the marketplace, I always share, like, look, you're not going to be the chief surgeon overnight. I get it. But what your friends are not telling you is they're not picking you, not because they don't trust you as their friend, but because if you're the chief surgeon, if you're in that operating room, they're happy you're in the room, guys. They want you, the resident doctor, in the room, but they do not want you to be the chief surgeon. If I move to Florida tomorrow, I'm not the expert realtor. Does that make sense? When I had our first son, Kane, I'm still not the expert parent. I'm not going to be the expert parent as long as I'm alive. Holy cow, kids. Like, it's a lesson every day. It's a very humbling experience for anyone who has any kids in their life of any level, any age, and any sex, any personality. It doesn't really matter. But when someone says we don't want to mix business and personal, what they're saying is either you're too busy. I had a season. I met Jennifer through running for mayor of Marvin. You know, there's no bad decisions. Some there's bad opportunities. It might be great for someone else, not for you. But there's no bad decisions because you made it. And but during that season, people were calling me left and right when I was running for mayor of Marvin in 2015. Brett, you remember those days. And people call like, hey, Dave, we just bought this amazing house for like $5 million in Lake Norman. You got to come for the housewarming party. And like, do you want to know what it is? I was like, wait, you bought the house? Someone in our group help you? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, did someone in our group help you? He's like, oh, no, man, you're running for mayor. You're going to be like governor and president and everything. I'm like, wait, what? We could, like, mayor makes like $400 a month. But I wasn't being president. They knew, I think at that point, they looked at me as the expert. I knew they knew how much I cared. They were inviting me in their home. They actually were asking me a question about real estate when they called. Like, I'm calling for two reasons. One, I have a question about a transaction. Two, we're going to close in a couple weeks. We want you to come to the housewarming party. They weren't telling me they were not mixing business and personal. They were being direct. I had gotten so close with all these people that were being direct with me. It's never business and personal. Everyone wants to mix business and personal. When that young lady in college that didn't date you because you're their best friend, they want to marry their best friend. They ended up marrying someone who was not their best friend, and then it didn't work out because it was not their best friend. What they're saying is, you're not husband material. What they're saying is, David, you're in politics now. You're not in real estate. I got out of that real fast. God redirected me. Sometimes you're redirected for your own protection. You know, when I lost that race, it was like one of the best things that ever happened. When I was drinking toilet water, it was one of the best things that ever happened. You know, moving to Charlotte, you know, having nothing was one of the best things that ever happened. But you have to be all three, guys. Like, you think like, well, I just know everything about real estate, but do you care? Well, I just care about my friends. Guys, everyone that you know has 8 friends that are realtors. They have 8 friends that are in mortgage. They have 8 friends that are in any type of business that you're in. They have 8 people. There's 1 million restaurants in Charlotte that everyone owns a restaurant or knows someone who owns a restaurant. Everyone does loans. Everyone does real estate. Everyone has the best next thing. Everyone knows about the best church. Everyone knows about the best moving company. And so you have to be the expert. You have to be present, because being the friend's not enough. It's most important, but it's not enough. But I want to encourage you that anything that has been a positive in my life has come from just giving more than I take, and just being the friend, being the expert, and being present. It's why it's so important to us. The cool thing is I really stand for everything I'm saying. So when you see slides and you're like, oh, you already said that. Who in your sphere needs your help right now, guys? When they don't call you, they're calling you. Does that make sense? When you don't hear from someone, you're hearing from them. It's like, well, I mean, if they call me, I'll help. Let me ask you this. Who's called you in the last week about a flat tire? Now, they don't call me because I don't even know how to change, like, barely change a light bulb. I do try. I'm not above changing light bulbs. But I break them. I went to Lowe's the other day, and I got the wrong light bulb. Then I came back. I got the right one the next time. Then I came back, and I realized my wife was like, yeah, but you didn't take the other piece. It goes to the light bulb. And so I needed that piece too. And so now the light bulb doesn't have the piece. It goes to the piece. So then I brought that piece, and I came back. But I didn't bring, like, the light bulb that time. So it fit into the piece, but it was a different size and a different color. You know why? Because I never had any of these experiences. I mean, I learned how to ride a bike in 6th grade. because it was a field trip, and I didn't want my friends, when they're not throwing eggs in my house because I was a weird kid, I didn't want my friends making fun of me yet again. So I just had to get on a bike. When I was 8 years old, I started washing cars and raking leaves and shoveling snow, because in New York we had a lot of that, so I got some good business out of that. And I used my money for a few different things. I used my money to go buy some stuff at the convenience store. When I go to the convenience store in Yom Kippur, because we had to fast, and I would fast, and I'd buy my family bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches and barbecue Lay's potato chips. I'd also buy myself a little bit of candy with the money that I'd made working during the day when no one was home. No one knows I'm in my room. And actually, I was allowed to go work as long as I shoveled my driveway first. So that gave me, like, I don't think I was born with entrepreneurial spirit. I don't think I was born to be a hard worker, but holy cow, talk about adversity. Like, you know, my wife always, when people are like, David seems really driven, like, how's he helping all these people and everything? He's like, well, he's the hardest working person I know. But my goal, it's not perfect by any means to be present at home. You know, we have soccer today, and Mark, you know I'm going to beat you to the soccer field. I'm going to try my best. You're going to try to get there first. We coach our boys in soccer together, but I'm going to be there first, because if I get there first on September 12th and someone else, and there was all good reasons not to be there, guys. I was on the metro that day with a woman who was crying, and I asked her if she was okay, and her friend said, no, she's not. She was a flight attendant supposed to be on the Pentagon crash the day before, but she asked for the day off. So the person who took her shift the day before died in that plane crash, and she was working that day. So she was heading to Reagan Dulles on the metro that I was on with her. Never have a second regret, guys. I want you to go back to your story and think, have you had a first regret? And if you had a regret, great. That was your one freebie. That was your mulligan. I don't play golf, but I think is that a term? Like, that's your handicap. Everyone gets the same handicap. You get one regret. You know, sometimes, like, you know, God has enough room for all of you. He's perfect. And I was reminded a good friend many years ago who finally got married. I was like, dude, if you never leave your house, the Papa John's guy is not going to be this, like, lovely young lady who's going to marry you. Well, if God wants, no. You got to do your part. You need free will, okay? So you can make one mistake. You can make a second mistake, but don't be about the same thing. My wife always tells me, she's like, I love that you don't make the same mistake twice. I try not to. We're going to make mistakes, guys. We're not perfect. Just don't have a second regret. A mistake is not a regret. My regret is not saying goodbye to my mom when I thought I had 40 years. I also lived in my own world. I wasn't walking a mile in her shoes. I wasn't walking even a block in her shoes. I wasn't even walking a foot. I wasn't thinking she might be gone in 2 weeks. I'm thinking I've got 40 years. Like, the world's about me, right? Like, the world owes me something. No, the world owes us nothing. So we need to make sure we never have a second regret. Is that fair enough? You know, we don't need everybody. Guys, we all want to please on some level. I've been working more on serving and not pleasing. We talk about it in our gang, like, we don't do sales, we do service. And that's not a cheesy, like, line to put on your cell phone or Instagram post. It's true. But also, I don't want to be a people pleaser. You know, you just help people however you can. It doesn't really matter what they think of you. I don't really care what anyone thinks of me. I care of how I leave someone. Like, I just hope I help. Now, if you tell me that I'm hurting you, then it's going to shut me down. Like, I'm going to move mountains to, like, make things better. But I don't want to please anyone. I want to please God. Ego is edging God out. We don't need everybody, guys. If you focus on the people in your life, you'll have more business you know what to do with. If you focus on the people in your life, your marriage may not be perfect, but it'll be better than it was this morning. Does that make sense? If you focus on your kids first and then their friends and their friends' friends, they're put in your life for a reason. You know, it's important. Proverbs 22:6 reminds us, if you're a parent, to raise up your kids the right way so they're older not to depart. The next most important thing is to know your kids' friends and know your kids' friends' parents, because you can raise your kids great. And unfortunately, a lot of kids go through a lot of tough stuff. And, you know, many of you may have heard the interview from the mom of the Nashville shooter, and she's heartbroken. I mean, she did the best job she could, right? Like, we all do. You hear that all the time. There was a documentary with the Columbine shooter. These parents are never going to be able to move forward because of the guilt. Like, how did my child do something? And everyone makes mistakes. I keep talking about how my goal is not to make the same mistake twice. But our kids are raised by us, but they're also raised by their friends, and they're also raised by their friends' parents. So we need to know who's in our lives and give them our all, and stop seeking out strangers. They're strangers for a reason. Now, don't get me wrong. My wife was a stranger. All of you were once a stranger, but I didn't seek you out. Okay, like, you were put in my life, I was put in your life, so I apologize if you're like, why was David put in my life? But I didn't seek you out. We have enough seeking, guys. Stop seeking out other people because the grass is not green. You know, a few years ago, my son was like, Dad, why do we have all these weeds in our yard? And like the dog always poops here, and like the grass is yellow. It's because we have some Bermuda and some fescue. And Jennifer again's like, yeah, I could have told you that. And so I was like, all right, this is a great story. This is great. Like grass is greener, you know, like where you water it, all those like cliches you see on Facebook and TikTok now when they dance around the same cliche that was on Facebook last year, that was on MySpace 10 years ago. And so I take my son Kane when he was about 5 years old, and I walk him across the street. This is a true story, guys. And I walk across the street to this really green grass because the neighbor had green grass. The guy's like, you have to keep up with the Joneses, right? Like you have a nice house, theirs is newer. You get the newer house, they have a nicer car. You get the nicer car, there's a newer, nicer car. You go on vacation, you went to Myrtle Beach, they went to Charleston. You go to Charleston, they go to Anna Maria Island. You go to Anna Maria Island, they went to St. Lucia. I actually went there once every 10 years. Like that's, like to be honest, I'm going to go to Myrtle Beach. I'm just as grateful. It doesn't really matter. I'm just grateful. We get across the street, we're looking at the grass. My son's like bewildered just a few years ago. He's like, Dad, look, there's, yes, Dad, yes, son, that's poop. He's like, I didn't see that. I'm like, no, you didn't see it from over there, from a distance, right? You're focusing all the junk in your own backyard. You can also focus on the diamonds in your backyard, right? Because a lot of them there, those are your friends. That's the old transactions. That's the old clients. You said how honored and grateful you were when it was happening, and now it's past. Now you've moved on to this. I didn't tell that to my son. I was off script there for a second. And then he's looking around. He's like, Dad, look at all these weeds. I was like, yeah, bud, it's green, right? But you didn't know it was weeds because the grass is always greener. Then you get there and it's weeds, and they're covering the poop. Now turn around. He turns around. He's like, whoa. I was like, what? He's like, that's magic. What just happened? Did Mom just fertilize? I'm like, no, bud. Even if Mom just aerated and fertilized, she didn't change the color of the grass in the 11 seconds we walked over. Look, she's not even home right now. She's at the grocery store with your brother. He's like, well, how'd the grass get green? I'm like, let's walk back over there. So I walked him back across the street. He's like, I was like, look, green grass, right? I was like, bud, it's weeds covering poop. You see your own weeds and poop, and you think everyone else has a perfect green grass. Focus on your own backyard, guys. Focus in your own house, not someone else's house. Focus in your own relationships, not someone else's relationships. If they're supposed to be in your life, they will be there. Again, yes, you're going to meet strangers, they'll become friends, but you're also going to meet people that are not supposed to be in your life, or they're supposed to be there for a season and for a reason, that's it. Don't seek them out. I want to give you permission to respond for your next meal. I know that's a standard I stand behind. We're always like chasing, well, I can lose a deal. Yes, you're going to lose a deal. You're going to lose a deal. And yes, if you don't seek out strangers, you're going to lose a deal. And maybe when you work so hard, like, well, that's God's plan for my life. No, that's your plan that you're like trying to blame on him when it doesn't work. Like if you just focus on the people that you've already said how honored and grateful you were that they're in your life and you gave your vows to at their wedding day and you told your kids, you prayed for decades to have these kids, and now that you have them, you're like, why isn't Johnny getting the scholarship, and why isn't Jackie starting in softball? Like we're looking at everyone else. Well, you know what? Someone else's kids might be a little more successful in academics, but the marriage is crumbling, and the marriage is great, but they can't get pregnant, or they have tons of kids, but they have no parents, or like their finances are great, but they never talk, and they're in a loveless marriage, or someone is straying. Beware the snare to compare, guys, okay? So we don't need everybody. We don't need to keep chasing more and more people. So this is a funny one that, like, so when I was writing the book, my writer, Robert Nolan, he works with a lot of musicians. You know, he wrote Michael W. Smith's book. He wrote the book I Can Only Imagine, became a movie. He's like just a very like accomplished writer. He got like the K-Love Award last year for Writer of the Year and everything. So God put some amazing people in my life, the agent, each and every one of you. That's what I'm saying. I'm not going to seek out any strangers. I don't need to, because I see every day the people that are put in my life. I just need to give you more than I'm already doing. Be a good hang. I know it sounds weird, but he told me this quick story I'll share with you. He's like, Dave, the artists always tell me, they get these artists that are popular. They have a few big hits, and they're like, I'll open for you. And then the main headliner is like, no, I have no interest. And he goes back to the Tom Brady thing. Everyone wanted to be Tom Brady's teammate because he was a good friend. And he was an expert. He knew how to like work well with others. He's like, Dave, everyone wants that good hang. Everyone wants to work with a good friend. He's like, Dave, I'm David. My agent's name is Dave. He's like, Dave and I picked you because you're a good hang. Like, you're authentic. Like, yes, you don't have this big platform like most of our clients. You know, the authors and the films. He's like, but we like you. You're a good person. That does go far, guys. Now, are they going to pick you just because you're a good hang? No. They're going to make sure that you're a great singer. Right? They're going to make sure that you're a great realtor. They're going to make sure that you're a great speaker. You're a great mortgage banker. You're a great husband, wife. But that is important. Being authentic and being real is important, guys. You cannot fake it till you make it. And no one cares how much you know if they know how much you care. This is more important than being the expert. So that's a fun road. If anyone, Heather, if you want to ride your motorcycle on it, stay in front of all for the full season. Stay in touch to serve without an agenda is going the extra mile. So I shared earlier that story about my friend that I was in a breakfast with him, and he shared that his marriage was crumbling. I'll share another quick story about in a meeting without an agenda. You know, many of you know Jimmy, who was killed about 13 months ago. You know, he used to work here with us, dear friend. Well, he was introduced to me in 2014, and he was not in real estate, and he was not buying a home. But a friend introduced him. So again, I'm not seeking out strangers, but when a friend brings a stranger in my life, they're not a stranger. And you can talk about business with that too, where it's, you know, if you don't seek out, like, let me just market and tell everyone how great I am. So you can tell everyone how great you are, and you can tell them you're present, and you can tell them you care, or you could actually just be the friend of the people that already trusted and respected you, or you could actually add value to the people that already entrusted you. So I meet with Jimmy, and our mutual friend, Ben, goes, you know, Jimmy wants to get into real estate. He doesn't have his license. Okay, so he's a stranger who doesn't have his license and wants to get into real estate. But he was introduced to me by a mutual friend, so I'm going to do everything I can to help the friend. So we meet, we get to know each other, he gets his license, he gets into real estate. He works with us for many years, he leaves, he comes back. And he was also a DJ, he was also like doing all these big events and everything. So the odds that he was going to get his license, make it in real estate, and be successful were like slim. Because again, the rules of the world are everything, right? It's not the relationships. So that's why the book is being written, guys. The relationships over the rules. The rules say that this 40-something-year-old Marine who's a DJ at nightclubs and who's also sober, but he's a DJ in nightclubs, can't make it in real estate. But that's exactly why he can make it in real estate, because he wanted to have a baby. And so he finally had a baby about a year and a half later, and so now he wants to be a present father. Well, in 2018, I spoke in Nashville at this conference, and the host asked my wife to ask about 6 people to write notes about like what our relation means to them. And the guy, the host and the hostess, they're like, we know relationships are important to David, so we think this will be a great gift for him. And we'll give it to him, we'll present it to him, we'll read it to him at the end of the talk. And so they did, and one of them was from Jimmy. And Jimmy said that he was lost, he was depressed, that he was far from God, and that like he didn't know where to turn. And then through our relationship, he's gotten close with God again. His faith has made his marriage so strong. Now he has this little baby girl. And so last year, you know, I opened the funeral up, and I cried because I do a lot of public speaking, but, you know, like just like with my mom, like, you know, you can't expect, things are going to happen you don't expect. But I gave the letter back to his wife, and I asked permission if I can put in the book. So I took out a big football player story, and I took that out. I was like, no, this is more important, because this was a friendship that was authentic. It came from a mutual friend. I had no idea where it was going. And now, like, we're like family. And his wife was like, holy cow, like they were coming to our church, and like they weren't like, I don't talk a lot about my faith all day long. You know, for me, it's important, because as I get older, it starts becoming humbling, you know, that like, okay, you know, we're not going to live forever. So it's important to know what your purpose is and where you're going. And so for his wife to have her husband and the father of their only child, their precious daughter, taken suddenly, it was a gunshot. He came home from a Batman movie with his older son, 1:30 in the morning, didn't want to wake up his wife and daughter, so he slept in her room, and she was in the master, and there was a gang shooting, and it went right through the window, killed him in like minutes. But the peace that she received, his wife, Vanessa, was knowing that they're going to be together again, and just give peace, whatever that peace means. But that relationship all started because of a friend. He didn't need to buy a house. He didn't need to sell a house. There's no transaction, guys. There's no transaction back in 2014. It was, are you willing to have coffee with someone that may or may not lead to anything? My friend did not say that your guys are going to become good friends. He's going to come work in your firm. You know, then he's going to get murdered after getting married and having a baby. But his wife is going to have peace, and their daughter is going to have peace. And don't get me wrong, I cannot imagine what they're going through. I talk to them pretty often. But there is a level of peace that she tells me that they have, knowing that they'll see their husband and father again. And that all came from not having an agenda. We think, well, we don't have time for that meeting because he's not an agent yet. He's not buying a house. He's not selling a house. How do I benefit? How do I make money? Guys, I'm not telling you to go broke. I'm not telling you not to worry about money. I'm not telling you not to grow your business and not to focus on taking care of your family. I'm telling you that there's people already in your life that if you focus on them outside of the transaction, even half as much as you focus on them in the transaction, you won't know what to do with all the relationships you have. Giving without receiving. In our culture and in the marketplace, when we constantly work to give more than we take, the rules of the game won't matter. You know, I keep saying like that quote does I know what it means to me. It's not like the most attractive, like flashiest quote, but when Marissa and I were going back and forth on it, I was like, I don't know what it really means to the average person who hasn't read the book. Well, Marissa actually did read the manuscript, and the point here is the rules of the game are if you're not helping someone in the transaction, then when they need you, they'll call. Like you don't need to reach out, right? Like and if they're not qualified to buy a house, if they don't have the finances to make a move, if they can't acquire what you're selling, then the rules say that when they are ready, they'll reach out. But this is not a nonprofit. It's not pro bono. We can't just help people. You know, speaking in Baltimore, Maryland a few years ago, and a young man in the back during the Q&A raised his hand, and he said, you know, Mr. Hoffman, this is all nice and everything, but I'm a little worried there's a little airy-fairy. I mean, it's all warm and fuzzy, but what happens if you just help a lot of people? Now, it's pretty far away, so I can't tell if he used air quotes, but I could just feel the air quotes. And he's like, what happens if you just help a lot of people and no one ever buys or sells a home? I'm like, that's amazing. That's best case scenario. You think my wife and kids care if I sell homes? They don't, guys. You see any rankings up on the wall? You see any awards? Beth and Marissa try to put them up. I hide them. I don't even know where they are now. I just keep hiding them. You know, we don't live to make money. We don't live to be successful. Now, God does want us to be successful. We are called here to be the best we can be. Whatever your plan is, that's why you go back to your story. But we're not here to be successful. We're not put here to be the best versus others. We're just put here to follow our purpose, whatever that is, as a mom, as a dad, in the marketplace, whatever that is. Does that make sense? And so again, the rules say you got to focus on the transaction. The rules say, you know, when you're late, you get flowers for your wife. But what happens if you actually get flowers because you're not late? What happens if you actually reach out to the people you told them how honored and grateful that you are on Facebook and Instagram, and they told everyone no, and you ask them, like, I've never asked for a referral once. You know why? Because I remember when I first started, everyone in real estate school was like, yeah, Dave, like, you don't know many people yet. You know, people were shocked when I sold 46 homes in 2005 because I was brand new. You know how easy it is to sell homes when you're brand new? You know how easy it is to start a church when you're brand new? You know how easy it is to run for office when you're brand new? They can't say anything. They don't know who you are. So if I can make that one friendship, if I can show them I'm the expert and I can be present because I got time, then it's easy, right? So people were like, wow, it's amazing. How'd you sell so many homes? I'm like, well, because no one knew me as their son's best friend from college, and I had to reinvent myself. No one knew me as their son's best friend's father, and I had to reinvent myself. No one thought I was too busy for them. No one knew that I was new to real estate. Now, I looked like I'm 43 now. This was back in 2005. I was 25. I looked like I was probably about 15. But if you're the expert, they don't care what you look like. But first, they need to know that you care, because they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so for me, it was easy. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes. It was hard. But for me, I just had to show that I cared. They didn't know me as anything else. Does that make sense? For a lot of y'all, you actually have more of an uphill battle because you have to reinvent yourself, not reinvent your story. Remember, that's why I want to go back to your story. Your story is not an identity in any position, guys. Your story is who you are, but it's not your potential. It's not your purpose. So I want to encourage you that the rules, I just throw them out the door. Now, my wife doesn't like when I don't speed. On the highway, I hate going the left lane. I end up in the right lane, and tractor trailers like honking me. And I was talking to Katie, and I was talking to Beth when I was driving to Nashville. I was going through Knoxville about a year and a half ago working on the book, and it was storming. And I was driving in Knoxville on 40 in the storm, and I was going on these windy roads, and like, holy cow, I finally pulled off on like on the ramp when you pull off so you don't like crash or whatever, because like, I can't do this. But I was going like 30 miles an hour, and I'm thinking to myself, I'd rather take an extra couple hours to be present to not get into an accident, and I just couldn't do it. And people were honking me. They're like, the rules say to go faster. I don't care what the rules say. The rules said to go faster. The other times when Jessica jokes with me, she's like, you need to speed and go in the left lane. I'm like, I'll take an extra hour going to Disney World. We'll stop 100 times if our kids don't stop talking, crying, screaming, yelling, whatever, however you want to call it. I don't want to speed because the rules say I can hurt someone. But if the rules of the world that came from just other people who, you know, I was talking to Beth yesterday about something. I was like, look, don't take what Stevie Wonder says seriously if he tells you that the paint job was poor, right? Listen to his music talents. But when he says like, oh, that's off-white, that's sand, that's beach, you're like, oh man, I thought I picked the same color in all the rooms. Honey, we have the wrong color in all the rooms. I thought I had beach in all the rooms. I didn't realize it was off-white and that's eggshell. Guys, You were so excited to hear from Stevie Wonder that after he was done singing, he told you your paint color was wrong. Does that make sense? Like his gift is he's one of the greatest artists of all time, but he doesn't see the different colors. I'm not making fun. I'm being facetious. He's one of the most amazing artists of all time. But think about it. Think about it. Someone who makes a rule in society that says where you come from is where you're going. That's because that's their story. Because they had a second regret and a third one. They never got out of their own scarlet letter, their own agenda. They're like, I'm just going to be a victim. You're all victors. Is that fair enough? A good fit is most important. Guys, you know this. The reason why we don't have 10,000 agents, the reason why we don't talk about recruiting all the time, but don't get me wrong. If there's 10 more people in Charlotte that need to be working with us, if there's 10 more people that need to be agents in our firm or need to buy or sell home, we'd love to help them as long as their values are in alignment. You know, like you guys know my faith, but like I did a talk not too long ago, and Glenn was there. Glenn's Jewish. I was raised Jewish. And I called him. I felt horrible. He was there, and he knew what I was going to say. I felt horrible because something I said, I think, came off wrong for a Jewish friend in the room. And I was like, no, this is just my story. But I care so much for my friend, and that I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't not being a friend, because it's not about me. You know, like we all have our values here in this company. Beth, you sent me an email last year when you and some of the ladies were going through a tough time in the summertime, and you said, she appreciated that even if we might have our own opinion on things, we might disagree at times, we all respect one another, and we all love one another, we all care about one another. And so a good fit is someone who's a good person. That's in all aspects of life, guys. That's for your friends, that's for your clients. You know, we parted ways. You know, Brad and Jennifer helped with a builder, good enough people, but our values weren't 100% alignment, so we had to cut that loose. We actually had another client. We had a seller that we had to cut loose before we went live. It would have made us a lot of money. Both of those would have made us a lot of money. You know what the rules would have said? We'll just grin and bear it. You know, maybe that they're rude or maybe they're micromanaging. No. Do you think you're put on this planet? Is your story to grin and bear it? Is your story to fake it till you make it? Is your story to think about your child your whole life? That's the thing. I struggled with the book because I don't want to live in the past. I won't think about it again after we're done here. Like, I hope this is all helping. But guys, you're not put here to fake it till you make it. You're not put here to go through the motions. You're not put here to just get through to the next day, to go your 1.5 vacations for your 2.5 kids, and then they go to college and you look up your spouse and you're like, I don't know who you are anymore. You're not put here to hopefully live to be 103 and be healthy and go for, you were put here for so much more. I just want to encourage you that, but just don't let bad people in. Now, sometimes a bad person will come in. You need to tell them to go away, and you can forgive them, but don't keep them there. You know, my father still reached out occasionally. He sent me something really nasty the other day. I just deleted it. He's never met my boys. My stepmom I haven't talked to in 15 years. I've forgiven them both. You just don't need to have them in your life. And that starts here in our company, but it really starts at home in your backyard. It's with your clients. Well, when I get older, when I have more experience, I'm not going to take that bad client. You know, like, well, you mean, like, I haven't gone on a date in 6 months. Maybe there's just nothing better out there for me. You know, well, I really need the money. No, you don't. No, you don't. You need to keep your standards. You need to keep your standards high and your expectations of others low. One of the best decisions I ever made was to stop letting other people lift me up. When I stopped expecting others to live up to my own expectations of myself. When I stopped thinking that just because my standards may be here, I was always disappointed when their standards might have been here. And it's not fair to them either. So guys, first impressions, anyone who's, dated someone, you remember that, if you're married, if you're in a relationship, you remember your first date, think about that first impression. When you see someone, we judge, guys. We judge unintentionally. We judge, unfortunately, by race. We judge by sex. We judge by someone's social or economic background or environment. And it's all wrong. We're humans. We make mistakes. But we need to understand it. No second regret. But don't assume. Anticipate. Anticipate how you can help. Anticipate their heart. Don't assume, guys. Don't worry about the reason for the introduction. I shared 2 stories with you earlier about living without an agenda, going to the meeting without an agenda. Sometimes I even say it. I'm like, hey, there's no agenda. I mean, I know it sounds crazy. Like you just bought a home last Tuesday. You just bought a home 6 months ago. You don't live in Charlotte. Like, there's no agenda. Like, you're just put in my life. You're a good person. I enjoy your company. I just wanted to check in and catch up. And what happens is it becomes a real relationship because, again, when that young man asked me in the Q&A, What happens if all these people just, no one buys or sells a home and you just help a lot of people? He came up to me afterwards and he's like, David, I just need you to know, man, like I texted my wife, like that changed my life. I'm not trying to take too much credit. I mean, actually, when I spoke at that Forest Hill talk, afterwards a man came up and he had like a gun in his bag and he was like, I was taking my life today. He's like, I texted my wife and I said, like, I've got everything I need at home. This is called faith at work, because men find their identity at work and women find their identity at home. And so when the man loses his job, when the woman feels like the kids are going astray, but that's not your identity, guys. That's why I want you to remember your story, because you never know why someone was put in your life. So that man said to me in Maryland, he said, at the church, he said he was going to take his life that day. Because he said, I have a gun in my bag. I was like, this is like, what? You know, I didn't know what he was going to say. Next, he said, no, I'm not trying to scare you. And he started crying. He's like, today's my last day. But I'm now reminded of my story. I'm now reminded that I'm here for so much more. He was finding his worth in his business, and he was failing. So he thought he was failing in life. Life and business are not the same thing. The gentleman in Baltimore, that was in Charlotte a few years ago to church. The one in Baltimore, he said, man, I've been staying out late, not straying from my wife, but straying from my wife. He wasn't being physically unfaithful. My first marriage lasted 1 year. I was never physically unfaithful, but I worked late hours. I sold like 80 homes that year. On the surface, my clients thought I was the greatest thing in sliced bread. When I started telling them, I was so ashamed. When I started telling them, like, yeah, I sacrificed so much to give that service to you. And so sometimes I made a lot of the mistakes that I said in 2005 driving down about being present that I wouldn't do, but being the friend that I wouldn't be. I wasn't being the friend at home. So that gentleman said, thank you for giving me peace. I don't need to sell a lot of homes. I don't need to make a lot of money to have purpose, to be successful in life. Life is not just about your business. Life is not just about like comparing yourself to your neighbor or your best friend and keeping up with the Joneses. That is the biggest weapon used against us, is when you look at everyone else. Like the biggest mistake in marriages, the biggest divider that we have is the husband or the wife looks at someone else's husband or wife. And they don't want to go elsewhere. They just wonder why I can't have that in my own backyard. So when I showed my son that the poop was covered with weeds and it all looked green, I was like, bud, let's just worry about our poop and our weeds. You know, like, and we can do that in our own backyard. Every opportunity to serve also becomes a teaching and evaluation pit stop for our own lives. Have you ever heard of the expression that like you receive when you give, that you learn when you teach? Guys, like, I hope that something is either encouraging or helping this morning. And honestly, selfishly, like, I really appreciate how present you all are in your time. I'm taking away the most, because this is a reminder for me that I need to be more present. It's a reminder to me, it's an encouragement to me that like when I see the market down and like transactions are down and like business is tough and we're going through some tough times, or like when my son's isn't listening or he's struggling in school, you know, it's a reminder to me that that's going to be okay if I just focus on all these, like, I look at all your beautiful smiley faces and I'm like, it's very encouraging for me, and I hope it is for you guys too. The transaction, guys, is good. The relationship outside the transaction is everything. You know, Chick-fil-A does such an excellent job in the transaction. It's not feasible for them to build a relationship outside the transaction, so they do the best service physically possible as a business. What we're talking about this morning is a relationship. The rules say you treat it like a business. I'm showing you, hopefully encouraging you, empowering you to reach your true potential. And your true potential is outside the transaction. When you don't attach money to the transaction and you don't attach money to the relationship, that's when the magic happens. You can't have, anxiety is double-minded. You can't have God and money in your head at the same time. You can't be focused on your friend, and you can't focus on your bank account. When I didn't focus on my bank account in the month of February, now we've got amazing people that focus on the bank account. but like, no one's looking at the personal account. I didn't tell Jessica I didn't look at the personal account, but I was more joyful. Because again, regardless if you have much or little, your joy should be found when you wake up. You choose it. The world doesn't choose it for you, just like the world tells you rules, or you choose your relationships that are already placed in your life. Don't spend time, invest time. I want you guys to hear this and really let this sink in. We don't have that much time, guys. Some of us will live to be 100, hopefully all of us, and some of us won't live nearly that long. I'm sure everyone in this room has lost a loved one, either young or before you expected it. And we all have the same 24 hours in a day, 168 hours in a week, 365 a year, except if it's a leap year. So what you do with your time is so critical. And what we're talking about this morning is focus on the relationships already in your life. You don't have time to seek out strangers. There's 7 billion of them. Are you going to get in front of all of them? Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player of all time because that's all he did, was play basketball. Now, he probably wasn't the best dad or husband. That's a different conversation for a different day. See, he was an expert. He wasn't a friend or present. But in basketball, Michael Jordan was the greatest ever because that is what he did. No one was going to outwork him. There's a story with Kobe Bryant because Kobe Bryant mimicked Michael Jordan, and Kobe Bryant had an interview with this reporter at the Olympics, I think in 2008 maybe, and the reporter had to knock on the door, a hotel door at 4:15 in the morning. And he looked in the peephole, and it was this 6'8" man. And he's like, wait, he didn't see his face first. He's so tall. And he's like, wait, that's Kobe Bryant. He opens it, he's like, Kobe, what are you doing in my hotel? What time is it? He's like, it's 4:15. Didn't you have an interview with me? This is Kobe Bryant. The reporter's pumped, but he's also shocked. And he's like in his boxers or boxer brief, I don't know the details. And he's like, what are we doing? He's like, wait, sir, didn't you say you wanted an interview before my workout? And he's like, yeah. I got the itinerary right here for the Dream Team. You guys work out at 9. He's like, no. The Dream Team works out at 9. Kobe Bryant works out at 4:30. And he's like, what? He's like, yeah, you got 15 minutes. I said I would do it. Like, that's your interview. So he did the interview, and then he did the interview on the way to the court. Then Kobe Bryant worked out from 4:30 to 9. Somewhere between 8:57 and 9:15, the Dream Team walked in because they're the Dream Team. So they show up whenever they want to show up. That's what you do in life, guys, because you have enough transactions. Why would you reach out to your past clients? You're already married. Why do you have to buy the flowers? Why do you just come home early or stay up late with your wife just being a friend? You already have that, right? You can move on next. You already courted your wife. You already have your kids. Let's just look at everyone else's now. The Dream Team worked out from 9 to 3, and then they went and showered, and they went on with their days. And then they had like drinks at 5 and dinner at 7. The reporter said thank you to Kobe when Kobe left at 7:15. And the reporter's like, wait, are you going to dinner? He's like, no, I'm going to a hotel room now the rest. I remember one time on Valentine's Day, I killed 2 birds with 1 stone. I got a night it was a very special, at a hotel. It was Valentine's Day a few years ago, and we got Hornets Laker tickets. And my friend who was manager of the hotel goes, hey man, the opposing team always stays here. I'm like, oh, it's the Lakers. So I was like, hey Jessica, after the game we should run back and just like get a drink. We should just get a drink, before we go to bed. Just get one glass of wine. She's like, okay. And the door is open, and I see Phil Jackson walk in. His friend who was a sports fan, like 9-time champion coach. And my wife's like, I was like, oh look, that's Hall of Fame coach. My wife's like, okay, whatever. And then she's a couple more players show up, and I see Kobe, but Kobe goes right up to his room. Everyone else, Lamar Odom walks in, and he goes right to the bar. And my wife's like, that's Khloe Kardashian's husband. I'm like, what? I'm like, you just ignored Kobe. But Kobe went right to his room. He was investing his time. Now, he's passed, but he's left a legacy in his daughters, hard workers. And it doesn't matter. I'm a sports fan. Growing up, I didn't have many relationships, so I interacted with the TV screen. I interacted with sports. That's how I built relationships, by dreaming. It's okay to dream. Okay, this is really important. Find a way to say yes, but say the right yes. And I love this quote because it's going to go against everything that I just said. It's going to sound like it went against everything I just said. Trying to be everything to everyone, you accomplish being nothing to anyone. We talked about this earlier, guys. You don't want to be a people pleaser. You definitely do not want to be a people pleaser. So when I say find a way to say yes, for me, again, everything I'm sharing is my own life lessons. You have your own lessons learned and mistakes made. But find a way to say yes. And again, it's in business, it's in family, it's in marriage, and all aspects of life. I was always told no. I would not shut a light off. I would get punished even though all the other lights were on. I would ask an idea. I was like, oh, I want to start my own business at 8 years old. No, you're not good enough. Why can't I see my mom? Your mom doesn't want you. I was always told no. No one wants you. I was always told no. No matter what I asked, I was told no. So when that professor said, you're 20 years old, you're a senior in college, we have this amazing opportunity as an economist, and you're the student we picked for the interview, I said yes. And he's like, well, do you want to know the opportunity? No, I don't think he even said the economist. He just said, I have an opportunity for you. Yes. Now, not every opportunity, even if it's a good opportunity, and the world says a good opportunity, means it's a good opportunity for you. That's why find a way to say yes, but say the right yes. But I was always told no. So he's like, well, you didn't even hear about the opportunity. I'm like, well, I respect you. If you respect the person who's offering the opportunity, and if the opportunity is in line with your purpose, which is why it's so important to be mindful of your story and why you're placed here today and on this planet, God's plan for you is so much greater than we could ever imagine, then you have to find a way to say yes. Because I was always told no. And so someone asks me something, it's like, oh, no. So many people are so closed-minded. They either say yes without even thinking about it. It's not the right yes. They say yes to everyone, right? They double book, they triple book, they overcommit. They say yes to everybody, and then they pick up the pieces later by letting everyone down. Or they say no, like, no, that's not possible. Well, I didn't even tell you what it was. Well, no, it's not done, because it can't happen. Because you're new to town, you can't do it. When I moved to Charlotte, I was told, the average realtor makes 15 grand your first year. I was like, great. I was like, how about year two? 18 grand. I'm like, awesome. Again, I made 27,000 in DC. I grew up on toilet water and dog food and one piece of bologna with green circles on the white bread on the way to school that I was going back and forth because I'm kind of hungry, but it's kind of embarrassing. I was like, 18 grand, it's awesome. First of all, I'm not the average person. No one's the average person, by the way. No one is average. Everyone is very special and unique, but most people don't remind themselves of their story. The rules of the world just take over, guys, and we just get too busy and we never slow down enough to realize what our true potential is. The number one comment that hospice nurses say and hospital nurses say that people say on their deathbed is, I regret. Now, you're going to have regret, just don't have a second. The way to find the yes and to say yes is to ask questions, is to find a way to say yes. Now, with strangers, I'm going to say no. Almost every time I'm going to say no. But if you're already in my life, I'm going to find a way to say yes. Does that make sense? Again, I'm not going to say yes unconditionally. I'm not going to say yes and be a people pleaser, not a God pleaser. I'm going to find a way to say yes to make it a win for you. And it doesn't have to be a win-win. Because if it's a win for you, it's a win for me. That's why I'm going to say yes more often than not. I'm just going to find a way to say yes. Does that make sense? Because if you try to be everything to everyone, that's also why I can't have 7 billion people in my life, and neither can you. Because you spread yourself so thin, seeking out all these strangers. I mean, guys, let's just think about this practically for a second. The people who entrusted you in their past, the people that picked you over so many other people, I always remind the gang, when I say the gang, just realtors, that if you filled Hornets Arena, which doesn't get filled that often, unfortunately, right now, it's like 15,000 people. That's how many realtors in Charlotte. If someone picks you over all these other people, if someone's a pastor at a church and you have 10 people there, I mean, this is the Bible Belt. There's a church on every corner. If someone picked you to marry over the 7 billion, why do we just look elsewhere? We look at them for everything that they do wrong, and we look elsewhere for everything that they do right. Right? It's and some of the stuff is cliche. Again, guys, nothing is rocket science, but you all need to be rocket scientists in your own life. Nothing I'm saying, you're like, wow, David's so brilliant. I mean, I never heard before that I need to be someone's friend. I never heard that I need to actually care. But what does the world say? The world just tells us it's not possible. The world tells us you've got to seek out all this stuff, because if you don't, you're not going to take care of your family, because you're not going to get ahead in life. You're not going to be successful. Find a way to say yes without just saying no. Because when someone asks you a question and the opportunity is yes or no, when you say no, you might be breaking their heart. And you know what? They're putting your life for a reason. So what happens, how do you know everything? Again, when I was the expert in the jock tax, when I was trying to help these athletes, I was called the expert not because I knew the most. I was called the expert because I did the work. No, when I would call these accountants and these agents, they were laughing. They're like, dude, you're actually going to try to represent these athletes? I remember I was testifying at Cincinnati City Council, and I think Ken Griffey Jr. was on that team back then. And the Bengals wrote not bad. They're like, man, we don't know who this David Hoffman is, but we really appreciate him because no one goes to bat for us. And not all of us make that much money, and some of us only play a couple of years. But I was trying to fight for them. And I said, Ken Griffey Jr., he doesn't have that many more years. They're like, wait, are you really worrying about Ken Griffey Jr.? And I'm like, well, first of all, everyone deserves fair, right? But I'm also worrying about the bat boy and the trainer. And I'm also worrying about the doctor and the doctor's assistant and the nurse. And the point is, I became the expert doing what no one else was willing to do. I got that job because no one else was willing to go. But it all started because of a relationship I was put in my life that I never saw coming. Don't just check a box. Guys, I ask so many questions. I probably drive my wife crazy at times. I probably drive my wife crazy when I'm home. I think she likes me more now than during the pandemic when I was home all the time. But because I ask a lot of questions. I don't ask too many questions, but there's a statement, a question. I ask a question to further the conversation. It helped me get my first job. But more importantly, I don't want to just be a co-parent or roommate. I don't want to just be someone in your life. Like, I don't want to just check a box. You don't want to just check a box. Kobe Bryant didn't just check a box. I just want to encourage you. Mother Teresa never had a lot of money. Mother Teresa didn't have social media, but she would have the most followers in the world. Right behind her would probably be Martin Luther King. Right behind him would probably be Billy Graham. None of them had social media. None of them had these big plans about like, okay, this is what I have to do to get business, and then I have to do this to get a following. I have to do this to show people. None of them had these big camera crews around them. Maybe Billy Graham a little bit, but it didn't come from him. That's not where he came from. But Mother Teresa and Martin Luther King and Billy Graham, they knew their purpose. And their story, like they just followed it to a T. And they went above and beyond. I talk about Kobe Bryant because I like sports, now having boys and kind of live through them. And, they get to play the sports I didn't really get to play much of. But don't just check a box, guys. Whatever it is in your life, in your family, in your business, don't just check a box. Don't just say like, well, the rules say this is all I can do. This is all I can sell. This is all I can help. This is all I can make. This is all I can give. I can't help these people because then I'm not helping these people. I can't meet with these people because what about these people? These people aren't going to make me money. We don't live for money, guys. We're not going to be here that long. We're not going to be that long. I mean, I don't care if we live to be 100. Like, I know most of you have a lot more time to 100 than I do, but I just know for a fact, fine, 100. Let's give it 100. You're not going to have 1,000. So we don't have that much time. So was your story to just check a box, to just go through your day job, to go through your nights and weekends, to look forward to that 1/2 vacations a year? Don't just check a box, guys. We already said this, but I want to say it one more time. Keep your standards high and your expectations low. Don't expect much from others. When you give more than you take, you don't expect anything from them. I had a mentor once who said, I was really disappointed, and my mentor said, you look really disheartened. And I was, because this person was taking advantage of a situation, and there was a lot of money on the line. But more importantly, I was shocked because I brought them into a transaction. And he said, David, you're disappointed because you wouldn't have done that. I'm like, yes, I wouldn't have done that. And that's a business decision, but it's in your marriage too. It's in all relationships. He said, well, you can't expect others to live up to your own expectations of yourself. About a year ago, I said to my wife, I'm sorry. I should just say that when I'm awake, to be honest. I'm like, hey, good morning, I'm sorry. I love you. Good night, I love you, I'm sorry. Just do it in a different order. For all the men in the room, guys, like, you're wrong. Just say, I'm sorry. I love you, I'm sorry, and get the flowers before you actually are wrong. It's like an investment. You worry so much about your retirement account and compounding interest. Get the flowers, guys. Like, show her love language, not yours. But that mentor said, you're disappointed because you're expecting this other man to live up to your own expectations of yourself. It's not fair to you. It's actually not fair to them. Now, he's wrong, but you let him in. And so you're only hurting yourself. You know that expression, like, being resentful of someone else, being bitter of someone else is like drinking poison and expecting them to get sick. Guys, don't lower your standards for someone else, but don't expect them to raise theirs for you. Does that make sense? My life's a lot easier now when I just don't expect a lot from others, because what we do is we expect others, and again, in marriage, so I said sorry to Jess about a year ago, and I've done it a lot more since then. Sometimes I don't even know why I'm saying it, and sometimes I do. I always know why I'm saying it. When you put $100 in a bank account, you're like, okay, it's safer there than it is on Amazon, and it's safer there than it is at a fancy restaurant. I said I was sorry. One, it's kind of like an investment until later in the day when I actually make a mistake. But all kidding aside, that time I said, I'm sorry because, I said, like, to try to get ahead of it, I was going to talk to someone about, like, my past. So when the book comes out, or when I was writing the book, it brought up a lot of stuff. Now it's like just a gift. Now, like, all my challenges in life, all your challenges in life, that adversity really is a gift that gives you the perspective. But I said I'm sorry to Jessica because I was like, I've been expecting you to live in the way I expect myself to live. Now, you're better than me in so many things, but you're a woman, I'm a male, I'm David, you're Jessica. We're different people. It's not fair to you that I'm expecting you to communicate my way. I'm expecting you, like we talked about earlier, right? I'm expecting you to react my way. I'm expecting you to do things my way. And she's like, oh, I appreciate that. And I was like, no, I mean this. Like, in all aspects of life, guys, the biggest disappointment we have is we expect others to live up to our own expectations of ourselves, and that hurts relationships. So we've been talking a lot about not seeking out strangers and going deep in our own backyard. And you're probably thinking, I haven't been going deep in my own backyard. One, because too much time has gone by and they're not going to be a relationship that's going to make money, or the relationship kind of went south. Well, a lot of times the relationship went south because of unrealistic expectations of others. And when you don't expect a lot from others outside of that they're respectful and caring, that's when the relationship gets stronger and stronger. Then, like that relationship I shared with the friend Jimmy, I didn't have high expectations. A friend wanted to introduce us. And so I'm just going to give everything I got. And so when I told that gentleman in Baltimore that, yes, you may never sell another home using this model, I don't know if it's going to, I think I had to refund his ticket price for that one. But he was like, no, that's awesome. That's better, you know. My boys, the number one goal for them, from me and my wife, is not for them to go to a big college and get a big career. My goal is for them to just turn into good men. I want them just to be good leaders. I just want them to honor their mom and honor anyone in their life. I really don't care how they do in school. I mean, I want them to do the best that they can do, because they're not doing the best they can do. That means they're being lazy and complacent, and they're not living to their potential like each and every one of us needs to be doing. Now that we're mindful of our story. But I don't care if they go to a community college or they go to Harvard or Princeton. I don't care if they go to college or get a job. I just want them to be the best they can be, but I want them to be good people with high standards where they give more than they take. That's what we talk about more than anything. We actually don't put enough time into our homework. Probably don't put enough time into projects. Hope none of their teachers will ever see this video. But no, all kidding aside, I just want them to be good people. This morning I was texting my wife. I got up with my oldest a few minutes before she did, and I was like, he's just being a great young man this morning. He's just being a good boy. He's 9 years old, my oldest. My youngest is 6. That's all I care about. That's the most important thing, guys. The world says you got to get straight A's, but straight A's are when I was growing up, I had a 2.9 in college. And in high school, I barely got through because I couldn't sit still, believe it or not. And and so I never even thought about college because I didn't have any money. So like I said, I started in community college. But now it's a 4.5. You have to have 4.7. You have to all this community service. Well, you should be doing community service. So I'm teaching my boys community service, not for college, but to be good men, to be good examples. Keep your standards high and expectations low, guys. It'll help in all the relationships. We've said this, and I'm just going to keep saying until the day I die, my last breath, guys. The world tells us that our past is who we are and what's possible. But our past does not dictate our potential. It does not define our purpose. Who you are does not change by your environment and by your decisions, by your lessons learned and mistakes made. Who you are was decided a long time ago, and it's going to be here as long as you're alive. You decide. Okay, you decide. So when you think that well, all these people on Facebook said this, and all these people at this conference said that. If you looked in their backyard, they have a lot of weeds covering poop. Fair enough? What odds are stacked against you? This was not the David show, and definitely not a sob story. Holy cow, I have more than I deserve. To be honest, I do it with a smile now. When my wife said to our youngest, when he was crawling over, when he was a little guy, to eat the dog food, she said it joking. She knows that, for me, I'm actually grateful. Now, that was not a plan. God did not say, I want David's mom to suffer. I want David to go through strife in his life. But this is a broken world. There's a lot of evil in this world. There's a lot of bad. We all make mistakes. I actually even told my stepmother, I didn't actually say it to her. I said I forgave her to her many years ago. But then I told Jessica, I was like, you know what? I can't fully understand. I want to tell you, you can never understand what someone else is going through. You should walk a mile in their shoes. You should attempt to walk a mile in shoes. You should anticipate what it would feel like to walk a mile in shoes. But no one in this room can fully understand what someone else is going through. My wife's gone through her own physical battles, her own challenges, like all of you have as well. And what she struggled with the most when people are like, oh, I went through the exact same thing, I totally understand. Now, you can never understand. I want to encourage you on that that's okay. Tell someone you know they're hurting, but you cannot understand what they're going through. But I did tell my stepmom through Jessica, I did not say it to her, just to give me peace. I said, you know what, I can about 5 years ago, I said, I can kind of know, not understand, but I can kind of know why I was kept in my room so much. I can kind of know why I was kept from so much food and drink. I was probably a lot like my oldest son, Kane, who has ADHD and is really hyperactive. Well, with him, we have him in brain balance. We put a lot of extra time into him, and he's on some medicines. We try to watch what he eats and stuff. But he's my son. I wasn't her son, and so I was like, I can kind of know. It gave me peace. Forgiving someone, I didn't let her back in. I'm not letting my father back in, but I forgave them. So I just want to encourage you to forgive them no matter what you've been going through. But I also want to encourage you that whatever odds have been stacked against you, I guarantee you that you can overcome them. I promise you that you can overcome them. And by the way, a couple people that had to leave, what was cool is they said in advance, hey, I want to be there, but it's okay if I leave early. And I appreciated that because Just like if you're running late, you always thank them for their patience versus apologizing. Because when you apologize, now you're like, okay, so I kept you waiting, so I put myself before you. Now I need you to forgive me. When you forgive someone else, it doesn't mean you keep them in your life. What odds are stacked against you guys that you're thinking are going to keep you from reaching your true potential? Just throw those chips aside. Just don't look back. I want to encourage you. The only reason why I shared a little bit of my story this morning is because, holy cow, not only what I came through as a child, but when I moved here, I knew no one. When I moved here, I knew nothing about real estate. And so like people joke all the time, they're like, who's your dad? When I was really close to Mr. Tate, 18 months into the business, when I was working at Allen Tate, Mr. Tate wrote a note and mailed it to me. And he said, you've had a great 18 months. I really want to meet you. And I was like, this is amazing. There's 2,000 agents here, and I get to meet Allen Tate himself. He passed away about 8 years ago at 84. And when I met with him, we became really close. His wife was always in the business, so it was never a real estate transaction. But it was so much more. He was like the father I never had. And we would meet like every week or two for lunch. And then like he'd come to my client parties. He was at our engagement party. Like we would go to events together. He was the president of Charlotte Union Chamber. I was the president 50 years to the day that he was. And every time we'd meet, he's like, what can I help you with? And it was never about real estate. I was like, well, Mr. Tate, I'm getting married. Well, Mr. Tate, we're having a honeymoon baby. I didn't see that coming. Like, you guys can plan all you want, guys, and then like anyone who's ever had a child, like the birth plan's not exactly what you want. You want the good news or the bad news, guys. The rules tell you that the world's already has decided what's possible for you, and then they'll tell you the rules. They'll tell you how to get married, how to have kids, how to run your business. They'll tell you to forget your dreams because you're not a child anymore. They'll tell you what is possible in your own backyard and to ignore your dreams, and that you're silly and just be happy and complacent. Now, your joy does not come from any of your actions, so you should choose joy regardless of what you're doing. But what has been stacked against you guys is not who you are. I want to encourage you on that. You know, there's an expression, I'm butchering it, so I'm going to apologize in advance. It's how you dance in the rain. And it's going to rain, right? Like I remind my family all the time, the economy is going to get bad. It's kind of happening already, right? But it's how you dance in that rain. Not like, oh, it's beautiful today. The challenge is when it's beautiful, we think it's always going to be that way. And then when it rains, we're like, oh, there we go again. It's always been raining my whole life. I'm a victim. You're not victims, guys. You're all victors. Does that make sense? I'm throwing a lot at you in a short period of time, but I really appreciate how present you guys are. So we've talked a lot about that this morning. What roadblock or obstacles have you had to overcome? I just want you thinking about this stuff. I just want you thinking about everything you've come from. I want you to think about everything you came from as a child, 5 years ago, last Tuesday, this morning. And I want you to think about why that happened and how to not have a second regret, but also want you to be mindful of that's not you. The sun will shine again, even though it rained. You're not a victim. I want you guys to hear that. And you don't have to seek out strangers. There's more relationships in your backyard. There's more people that have already put in your life that if you just focused on them, you have more business and more relationships and more opportunities to serve than you can ever imagine. And then who or what is holding you back? See what we're doing here is we're kind of landing the plane. When a plane is landing, while the wheels are coming down, the flight attendants tell you to take your seats. The captain tells you about like the credit card with all the free points. And it's this great opportunity. It's never going to happen again until the next time you fly. I mean, it's true though. Like every time you fly, it's like the same story. It's like for this month ever. And this month only. I'm like, yeah, but when I was flying down on our anniversary trip, it was March. When I'm flying home, it's April, and it's still this month only. You guys, I actually said to the flight attendant, I'm like, you guys should change the script because on the way down it was for this month only, and on the way up it was for this month only, and these are 2 different months. What is holding you back? Because when the plane's landing, the flight attendant's talking to you, and the pilot's talking to you, and your passengers are talking, and you're kind of putting everything together, and you get all distracted, and the chips are all stacked against you, and your past has told you what's not possible, and Facebook tells you. Guys, I do not Google. So you want the good news or bad news about Google? The good news is if you want Google to tell you what you want to hear, it'll tell you. That's why I'm not a people pleaser either. You know what the bad news is? If you want Google to tell you what you don't want to hear, it'll tell you. Like if you don't want to hear what Google has to say, then don't go. And if you want to hear what Google has to say, then I guess you should go. But these are just other people that are telling you whatever they want to tell you. And maybe they're the expert, maybe they're not. But that's not the truth. The truth is in your heart and in your mind. The truth is the people that are in your life. The truth is who you are. No one has walked a mile in your shoes. My goal is to walk a mile in all your shoes. That's why I try to get to know everyone more and more and to help as much as I can, but no one knows. So who or what is holding you back? Now, if someone is holding you back, cut them loose. If something is holding you back, cut it loose. And that could be a real object, or that could just be a rule. That could be something you've dealt with your whole life that has not been dealt with. That has been something that someone has been telling you, maybe a family member or a quote-unquote friend who's not a real friend. Guys, acquaintances are not friends. Remember, we started this morning with who your friends are. Like being a friend, see, for me, it was really easy because I didn't have any friends. So it was really easy. I was like, well, I'm just going to show people I care and try my best to communicate their way and add value and give more than I take and be in their lives. And if they don't want to be in my life, then we won't be friends. But if they want to be my friend, I'm going to give everything I can. Who or what is holding you back? See, my life is really easy. You know why? Because nothing I can imagine. When the pandemic started, I sent a note to the gang. Anyone who was here then will remember. I said, hey guys, you want the good news or the bad news? You know, the bad news, the good news is none of you saw this coming. Excuse me, the bad news is none of us saw this coming. And the pandemic's bad. And like one of my dear friends' dad died, and you have many loved ones, and you know, like the pandemic is bad on so many levels. I was like, the bad news is no one saw this coming, and it's really bad. The good news is no one saw this coming, so stop worrying. Does that make sense? We spend so much time in our own head, worrying about what could happen, worrying about what's not possible, worrying about what could go wrong. Every time the plane's landing and all these people are talking, all I say to myself is, thank you. Thank you, God, like I'm landing again, because I hate flying. I do it way too much if someone doesn't like to do it. And a flight attendant once asked me, like, why I do it so much. I'm like, well, because I'm called to go wherever people are placed in my life, live. That's what I do. And so I'm not going to let anything hold me back. I'm not going to let the fear of flying hold me back. I'm not going to let the past saying that if you face strife in your life or abuse, then I'm going to abuse. I'm not going to abuse. I'm going to talk to a therapist to make sure that I don't do anything. I don't have any chains. I'm going to break all those chains, and I'm going to live the life that I was called to live to the best of my ability, and I'm not going to let anything hold me back. But more importantly, I need you not to hold back. I need you not to let anything hold you back. Perry back there, man, you're supposed to be in Barcelona right now, so I'm grateful you're here, and you'll be in London. He's got a great story he should share with all of y'all one day. If you're a Clemson fan, then he's probably one of your favorites. But I guarantee you, I know some of your story, my friend, and you haven't let things hold you back. And each and every one of you, I know many of y'all. Mark, you become a dear friend. Glenn, you're going to be in New York tomorrow. You just keep on going because you're not going to have that regret. Your mom knows how much you care, and I know that she doesn't remember all the time everything that was said, but she remembers it in the moment, and she has that beer with you, and she hugs you, and I still smiles, and then Jen, same thing with you, with your mom who was MS. Like you're not letting hold back. Leon, what did we talk about the first couple times? It wasn't real estate. So I mean, I can point out each and every one of you because I'm so grateful for each of you. I just want to encourage you to not let anything hold you back. I keep going back to that because I wanted that moment where someone is like, dun, dun, dun. I'm not a performer, guys. I'm just being me, authentic. One last time. I want you to hear this one last time, guys, because you all have your adversity. It's not my adversity. You all have your own story. The adversity in your life breeds perspective. That perspective is such a gift. My biggest concern is my boys don't have enough adversity. That my boys will wake up one day when they're adults and they'll be victims. They'll feel like the world owes them something because they don't have perspective. The greatest gift that I've ever received is a perspective that came from adversity. Daniel, you and I were sharing your story not too long ago, and I imagine you're so much better off today than before all that, right? You learn from that. The reason why I value relationships and I value each and every one of you is because I never had them, and I never knew it had each and every one of you. And so I just want to encourage you that if adversity has been holding you down, if the rules of the world have been holding you down, I just want to encourage you that that's someone else's rules. That's someone else's story. That's not your story. Fair enough? We talk about this. Assume nothing, anticipate everything. That young lady, I don't know her personally. Marissa found that picture, but it's beautiful. It's a beautiful picture, and it shows that she's a much better surfer than me. I've never done it before. I'm kind of clumsy. I'm not very good at it, I'm not very athletic. She's anticipating the next wave. She's not assuming where the wave's going to be. She's anticipating where it could be. She's not assuming there's not going to be a wave because there's no wave now. We assume. And there's an expression, when you assume, but there's truth in all that stuff. When someone says, I was just joking, what they're saying is, I didn't mean to say it out loud. Or I've been trying to say that to you for 3 years, and I either needed to make it into a joke, or I needed to have a glass of wine or two, or I needed to catch you. There's truth. And maybe it's a heart problem, not high cholesterol, high blood pressure. Maybe it's a heart problem. When we tell jokes that are hurtful, when we're sarcastic, when we say things under the influence or in a moment of weakness, when we're angry, there's truth. You can say you're sorry, but when I do it, you know what I'd say with my wife? I said, I'm sorry I said that, and I'm sorry that it hurt you. I should not have said that. Now, I can't walk back what was said. I can't say, I'm sorry for what I said. I'm just sorry I said it. And so I have to anticipate what I may say. Sometimes when I walk in the house, guys, I walk in the house, and as soon as before I walk in, I sit in my car for a couple minutes, and I just think about like all the good in my life. I don't think about adversity and strife in my life. I think about all the good. I think about all the relationships. I think about all of you, all my friends, and then I think about my family. And so I shift energies away from any tough business deal, any bad news I just saw in my inbox, anything that's going on in the world. There's a lot of junk in this world, guys. There's a lot of moving stuff. And I have to intentionally do it. Sometimes I'll even go, like my sons sometimes take these calm gummies, not like CBD or anything, like they're magnesium. Once in a while, I'll run the house before I even give anyone a hug or kiss. I'll just run over there and pop them in, and I'll be like, hey guys, how's it going? Because I know like I'm far from perfect. I know my weakness. I will say what's on my mind, not intentionally, but because like I think my EQ is probably higher than my IQ, so I'll see something. Now like I'll say like, oh, I really want to tell my wife what I'm thinking. Like she looks like she's upset. I want to help her. I want to be a fixer, but I just need to shut up and walk away. When I have the calm gummies, I'm quiet and I walk away and I go play basketball with my boys outside. That's just a little trick for, it helps me. Follow up and follow through monthly. Guys, if I check in with you and you think like David's always checking in, it's because I'm just checking in. Like there's no motive. And that's just in all aspects of life. This is not business. I mean, I wouldn't wait a month to follow up with your wife or husband but like, guys, I mean, I didn't talk to my mom enough. I didn't. That's my one regret. I was on the phone with her and I was like, well, I've got all the time in the world. I didn't. None of us do. So in business, this is good for business. Now in family, you probably do more often, but follow up and follow through. Now following up is checking the box we said not to do earlier because you have to also follow through. You know, it's like going to church and while you're there, you're playing on your phone. Or it's like showing up early for the pregame for the Panthers and the tailgate and showing up early for the movie premiere, but then you're late on your date with your wife, or you forget the anniversary, or you're late for church. You know, following up and then not hearing back. In real estate, it could be scheduled an inspection, you didn't hear back. Well, then you didn't schedule an inspection. You know the expression, if a tree falls in the forest, no one's ever here, it didn't make noise? The answer is no, right? Like who did it make noise to? Like if you're not actually following through to make sure it fell, it either didn't fall or it didn't make noise. And so you have to actually walk a mile in their shoes. And so that like in my life, again, I was telling my wife last night, I was just like, you know, she was asking me about the economy. She was reading something online. I'm like, yeah, no, it's not good. It's not good. It'll get better. It's all cyclical. I was like, but to be honest, my job security is that if I reach out to someone, they respond. That's it. Regardless if it's an agent, if it's a colleague, if it's a friend, if it's a client. My security, I said to my wife, my security is if I reach out to you, that not only do you respond, but that you're happy and that you're peaceful and you feel like that I'm honoring, cherishing, respecting you. My security as a dad is that my boys feel loved and safe with me and that they can learn from me. And then we went to sleep. So, but that was following up and following through. So we're almost done here, guys. We tried to time this. Mercer really helped me with this to do it 2 hours and land the plane. You know, sometimes the plane's a little bit early, sometimes a little late. When the plane's late, the pilot doesn't say, yeah, we didn't make it on time. They always delay on the front end so that when they get there 5 minutes early, they're like, oh yeah, we caught up our time. You hear that all the time. They'll never say, sorry, you're late. The delay is on someone else and then the reward is on them. Because we always judge others on what they do and we judge ourselves on our own hearts, right? Because we wouldn't have done that. Embrace conflict. This is something I was so bad at. I've gotten so much better. It's not my greatest gift by any means, but I've gotten so much better. I used to be a people pleaser, and so you can't have conflict if you're a people pleaser. Like you just want everything to be perfect. So you just push it under the rug. And then someone else says something you don't want to hear, you just push it on the rug. It's all going to be okay. And then you say this over here and you say over there. That's saying yes without finding the right yes. You're just saying yes to everyone, and you're not solving conflict at home in your marriage or with your kids and with your clients. Your clients say they want this price, it shouldn't be worth that. Your clients say they don't want to make these improvements. You say, okay. You're not order takers. You're not order takers in any aspects of your life. And so I used to not want conflict so much. I was like, whatever it takes to not have conflict. Now I embrace it because if you're direct with truth, but you have love, that's a real relationship. A relationship without truth is disingenuous. A relationship without love is abusive. But if you don't have love and truth, that's not a relationship, guys. That's a transaction. So if you don't have conflict in your life, you don't have passion. And if you don't have passion in your life, you're not living your true life. If you're not making mistakes, I mean, when things are going too well, I'm like, okay, I'm either not pushing hard enough or I'm not pushing hard enough. I'm like, oh, guys, show me the other shoe. I hope that other shoe is not too big, like a size 15 is gonna hit me right on the head. Like, hope it's like my little son's baby shoe. Because when you're like, oh, life's really good, then you get hit over the head. It's because you've been putting it all under the rug, and now it's time to sell your house, and you move the furniture aside, and you pull up the rug, and you have all this moldy stuff, and you have like old documents and taxes that weren't paid, and you have all this stuff under there from years and decades, and you're like, that's why my marriage didn't work. That's why I have no business. That's why my family and I don't talk anymore. Embrace conflict, guys. Love and truth, care and candor. Fair enough? It's all about relationships over rules. And then, last but not least, this talk is called Relationships Over Rules. The rules say that we only have 24 hours. We don't have time to focus on all the other people in our life. We'll send them Christmas cards over the holidays or Hanukkah if that's what they celebrate. Maybe we'll send them a message on Facebook. Maybe we'll talk to them and ask them and smile and talk for a couple of minutes after the soccer game if we know them because they're on the same team. But to be honest, like when we really spend time with them, all we're trying to do is get to our next appointment or tell them about our kids. We don't have time for their kids, and we barely have time for our kids. I always ask myself this, and I hope I give myself the right answer. I don't ask anyone else my opinion because everyone will just tell you what you want to hear. I always ask myself, I ask God, when I say I'm talking to myself, I'm talking to God, just so you know. I was like, God, please put on my heart that if someone else's kids are in the lake, and this is just a metaphor for life, and my kids are in the lake, and someone goes under, I don't care which one of the 4 kids it is, please put someone in my life that I can help that is not going to buy or sell a home, is not going to tell me what I want to hear, is not going to put money in my bank account, is not going to make me feel good, is not going to give me my love languages. Like, God, please put people in my life that I can serve, that I can rescue, or just be a bright light for. And the only way you can do that, guys, is by walking a mile in their shoes. We've talked a lot this morning about being the friend, being the expert, be present. The reason why you focus on the people in your life is because they already raised their hand. They already showed you that they love you, they trust you, they respect you, and they need you. And just because they don't raise their hand every day, they might think you're too busy. They might think they know you care, but they don't know how much you know, or they might not know how much we care. And so I'm going to challenge you to walk a mile in their shoes, because until you walk a mile in their shoes, you don't know what they're really going through. And until you know what they're going through, you could say you understand, we don't. And I'm looking in a mirror when I talk through a window, guys, with you guys. I'm talking to myself when I'm talking to you guys. I attempt, starting at home with my marriage, starting at home with my boys, starting in our office with all of our gang in real estate, starting with my friends, I attempt to walk a mile in their shoes, because we spend so much of our day, the world just covers us with so much white noise, so much negativity, so much junk, so many false truths that we're like, we don't have time. And then we see other people and we cross in the night and we never build true relationships. Does that make sense? And we never leave time to actually use the gifts we have to change someone's lives. I promise you, if you walk a mile in someone's shoes and just check in with everyone in your life and just focus on those people over the strangers that may or may not give you money, and you're going to sell a lot to get money, and I'm not talking about real estate, I promise you that you will live the life that you're designed to live, okay? So, ask me anything. 12 o'clock, 2 hours. Was this helpful? Okay, so we're either done or you can ask me anything. Was this helpful, guys? I know it was a lot. Anyone? Anything? Is this good? Okay, well, yes. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you, Bill. All right. Well, like I said, this was the first time for this talk, and Marissa did an excellent job helping me put together. She actually read the entire manuscript of the book. And I wanted to do it here first for our gang and my friends, but I just want to encourage you guys that, again, I share a little bit of my story. One, to remind you that you have your story. That's most important. But second, to encourage you that whatever you've gone through, the world will say, and the rules will say, and Google will say, and your neighbor will say, and your best friend and your family members, everyone will give you their 2 cents, and they will say that's who you are, and that's all you're going to be. I just want to encourage you that's not true, okay? Is that good? All right, well, I did my best to stay right on time, so I hope that was helpful. All right.